Meeting back to order. We had a special closed session and we gave direction back to staff. With that, I would like to have everyone stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I could have Genevieve Cacciatorian lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Genevieve. Tonight, we will not have the city clerk. The city manager will be doing the city clerk. So, city manager, will you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Agramonte.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallion.
Present.
Councilmember Hunley.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here. Thank you, Carol. And before we open public comment, I'd like to announce that we will be allowing public comment after item 3B. With that, I'd like to go ahead and open public comment.
She has to go first. Sorry.
Hi, Sarah Ford, East Napa Street, Sonoma. Oh, my timer's not working. A couple of important things I just wanted to talk about. Something really monumental happened on November 10th at the school board meeting. As you all know by now, because I sent you the Sun article. The school district decided to completely phase out gas-powered leaf blowers, completely, effective next month. And they also stipulated that electric or battery-powered blowers be used only when there's no other tool for the job, and also that electric blowers never be used during the day when students are present or within half an hour of their arrival to school. They've purchased electric blowers, and the change will be complete by next month. It took them under 2 months to reach that consensus. I want to thank the city staff for providing their researcher with information. And they had all the same information that the city council has had, and for them, it apparently was a no-brainer. The change has the wholehearted and enthusiastic support of their maintenance manager, who's now going to be retraining all of their staff. A second thing I want to talk about, which is that SNALB and others in our community are proposing a compromise ordinance exactly along the lines of what the school board has just done. We really listened to people who spoke and wrote about wanting to use their electric blowers occasionally at home. And we talked with a lot of landscapers many of whom are actually really sympathetic to our concerns, and some of whom have already signed on to this idea. Our proposal would entail the same rules for all zones, for ease of enforcement and for fairness. There would be no gas blowers in any zone. Electric and battery powered would be allowed everywhere, with consistent hours in all zones. An ordinance means it can be amended and tweaked down the road as needed, unlike a ballot measure, which would require another ballot measure. This ordinance would represent a significant compromise for many parties, but would be satisfactory to most. And it would mean the issue could finally go away, could finally be resolved. The school district found it could no longer turn a blind eye to the clear evidence regarding the health hazards associated with especially gas leaf blowers, but also electric and the particulate matter, and that's why they've said no electric blowers during the day when kids are there. I certainly hope that all of you will also be able to come to the same realization and put forth an ordinance such as the one that we propose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Cook and council members. I'm Georgia Kelly. I'm on Mitchell Way in Sonoma. Since the Sonoma Valley School District was able to make a far-reaching decision regarding the use of leaf blowers after only 2 months of reviewing the same information that the Sonoma Neighbors Against Leaf Blowers provided to the City Council and the city staff. So my question is, why is the City Council unable to make a decision that will protect the health and safety of Sonoma residents when it was so easy for the school board? It is completely unnecessary for this issue to become a ballot measure. Since the school board thought it was a no-brainer, I think they've made it abundantly clear that it is just that, And in essence, I think the school board has made the majority members of our city council look a little ineffective in making a decision that should be made by the council. So I'm going to ask the city council members, do you care about the health and well-being of the residents of our community? Or would you rather kick the can down the road and make voters spend the next year in debating, arguing, and in contentious atmosphere, creating a contentious atmosphere in our communities before we get to a decision on a ballot measure? Because this really would be a whole year of doing that. We have elected all of you to make these types of decisions in a timely and decisive manner. You were elected to exercise leadership, not to create ballot measures. So I implore you to bring back the leaf blower ordinance for the revisions that we have suggested and that you heard Sarah Ford mention before me and at the last few city council meetings, to ban gas-powered leaf blowers throughout the city of Sonoma, everywhere, for everyone, and allow electric blowers with restricted days and hours for everyone as well. To avoid taking up this ordinance again with these compromises in mind would be, I believe, a default of responsibility of the city council. It would also make the council appear somewhat inflexible and unwilling to compromise, since we are coming to you with a compromise that we've worked out with neighbors and among ourselves. So, I'm urging you to take this issue seriously. I believe that if you could make a decision on this and ban the gas-powered leaf blowers, let the opposition come together and put a ballot measure on if they think they have enough people who would fight this. I doubt that they do. We had nearly 1,000 signatures of people who supported the leaf blower ban, even when it was all kinds of leaf blowers. And we didn't even have the time or opportunity to go to door to get those signatures. So I think we have a lot of people who would support this, and I don't believe there would be a ballot measure to oppose it. So I urge you to take this issue seriously, make a decision to bring the ordinance back, and to review these compromises. Let's get this issue behind us. We have proposed a compromise, and we hope you are able to revisit your positions and to let a new reading of the ordinance pave the way for a vote from the City Council. Let's protect the health and well-being of Sonoma residents with a timely decision from our City Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Christine Mismer, 564 2nd Street West. I have something that I want to read to you this evening that was drafted by another member of our church, Dave Ransom. It reads, I want to thank the council for hearing the presentation on housing for the homeless, but the homeless are not just those on the street. They include folks who are couch surfing and folks who are doubled up or tripled up because of the high rents. There are only a few Latino homeless in the valley because they double up and take care of their own, but no one should have to live squeezed into a little house, as the young woman testified last council meeting. Actually, we ought to be able to house the homeless much more quickly. In the German town of New Eisenberg, which is about the same size as Sonoma and the Springs, they turned an abandoned printing plant into a fully equipped shelter for 700 in just 48 hours recently. And that was for an influx of immigrants from another country. In Sonoma, that kind of civic pride comes through in the Thanksgiving dinner that is open to everybody. We can't do something for the homeless, or why can't we do something for the homeless before Christmas? At the same time, I want to ask you to take immediate action to deal with the broader housing emergency in the valley. We need a moratorium on rent raises and evictions, so no more people are pushed out of their houses, particularly during the holidays. As you may know, the city of Alameda passed a moratorium like that within the last 2 weeks. It's good for the 65 days that they need to develop continuing ordinances protecting renters. In Alameda, it took 2 arrests and blood on the floor to get this passed. The landlords filled the council chambers and the renters were shut out in the foyer. The landlords were organized by the California Apartment Association. The association says it represents both the big and the small, but it's the big regional and statewide landlords that hold the reins of power. Their business model, and they say this in print, is to maximize profits for their wealthy investors by taking over older, Class B apartment houses and turning them into luxury apartments at twice or 3 times the rent. That is precisely what is happening at the Sonoma Mission Apartments in the Springs, and what will be happening throughout the valley if something isn't done. These are the pre-1995 rentals that could be covered by rent control and saved for salt-of-the-earth renters. And that's why big money is opposing rent control so strongly. Again, thanks for getting the ball rolling. Please do think about doing something before Christmas. And in Sonoma, I don't think that we need arrests or blood on the floor to get a moratorium passed. I also have a couple of other points that I would like to read from someone who is anonymous.
I'll give you another 30 seconds.
Okay. Vacation rentals, utilizing residential properties that are not the owner's primary residence should be banned. 2 weekends a month of tourism can exceed a month's rent for a tenant. Vacation rentals are destroying the rental housing stock and creating unsupervised commercial usages in residential neighborhoods. Approved vacation rentals should be heavily taxed. Thank you for your time, and I hope that we can come to a conclusion before Christmas.
And thank you. And as a reminder, item B, the presentation of the report of options for ending homelessness in Sonoma County by 2025 will be coming up shortly, and I will allow public comment after that.
Okay, I hope I got this right. Josette Brose Eicher, Boys Hot Springs. I came here a couple of months ago and told about something I witnessed. A neighbor's gardener putting a gas-powered leaf blower on his 12-year-old child's back. No mask, no ear or eye protection for either of them. I have been annoyed and frustrated by the constant use of leaf blowers since we moved here 13 years ago. It was this incident that really kicked me in the butt to get involved. I am heartened by the school board's recent decision. I feel this is a teaching moment. Parents will realize what the school board has done to protect their children and realize the next step is to protect everyone. This could also be the perfect opportunity for the city council to now pass the same type of compromise ordinance and not put this on the ballot. This could work and be adapted going forward, unlike a binding ballot measure that will have to go to another vote to be changed. I think it is time for the council to follow the school board's lead and pass a similar ordinance. With both the school district and the city of Sonoma banning gas-powered leaf blowers and mandating the thoughtful use of electric ones, it will send a message to the rest of the county. It is my hope this will happen, as Dave and I plan to start bringing this issue up with the County Planning Commission and the candidates for District 1 Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marilee Ebert, E-B-E-R-T. I just wanted to tell you about a very unfortunate and uncomfortable incident that I encountered yesterday. I have done a couple of different things. Gary, you had told us to go talk to our neighbors about leaf blower issues, and I did go to talk to one across the street, and he told me he would do whatever he darn well please. And he is one of 4 neighbors that hire the same landscaper. And so I did what the rest of you told me to do, call the police. Well, the police decided to inform them who it was that had made the complaint. And so I had 3 very angry neighbors come to my face yesterday, and it wasn't very comfortable at all. So, we do what we're told, and it just backfires. If this isn't a contentious issue, I don't know what would be. So I'm just going to tell you that I'm done calling the police, because the last time I called, do you know what I was asked? He said, "Are you willing to go to court to testify about this?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Are you willing to go to court to testify about what you witnessed?" I said, "I'm just calling about the landscaper that doesn't have a sign on his truck." And he goes, "Are you willing to go to court?" I shouldn't have to do that. That's ridiculous. I'm tired of policing my neighborhood. It's time that you guys make a decision and then get an enforcement officer. And the enforcement officer will more than take care of his or her salary by enforcing all the ordinances in Sonoma. It's not just a leaf blower issue. They'll more than make up their salary. So I want you to know that we presented you guys with the exact same information that we presented to the school board. All we had to do was meet with Luann one time and come to one school board meeting in this exact room. And they understood it right away. And Tony Albini, the gentleman that oversees all the maintenance, he sat right over here. And he just smiled and said, yeah, I can train my people. I can have it done by the end of December, next month, this year. So I went up to him after the meeting and I said, as a mother of a kid with compromised lungs, I just thank you so much. I want you to know how gracious I am about this. And he said, he looked me in the eye and he said, it's all about the kids. So I want you guys to think about that. It's all about the kids. And you guys were elected to represent and protect the citizens of Sonoma. So thank you. I hope that you'll look at this issue again.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michelle Ritchie, R-I-C-H-E-Y. I represent a member of the Sonoma United Methodist Church, the Spiritual Action Group. Our primary goal is to keep social justice in the foreground of our community. And I hope that you understand that the unreasonable rent increases and unjustified evictions are a primary cause of homelessness. So in order to keep the number of homeless people from rising exponentially, and I know this is asking a lot, we're asking for something before Christmas, an emergency moratorium on rent raises and evictions without cause, until solutions to the housing problem can be found. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I live on Newcomb Street in Sonoma. I've been here before the City Council for 5 years now, asking you to do something about gas-powered leaf blowers. We're not going away because we are probably in a worse situation than we ever were before. Even an ordinance that was voted on and passed when Councilman Barbos was on City Council is still not on the guidelines that people can pick up at City Hall, not to blow into the street or your neighbor's yard. So we're not going away. I would also like to share a kind of an experience I had on Tuesday. I was at Pete's Coffee in the morning on my way to work at a ropes course where I work as a volunteer sometimes 3 times a week. And it was a very, very busy morning, and there was a group of seniors sitting at a table, and there was a man who walked in with his caretaker who had oxygen, and he walked through the biggest dust cloud of particulate matter and leaves and brake dust I've ever seen. And that was Waldron. Waldron has known about this for 5 years. He's had ample time to replace his horrible, nasty gas-powered blowers with cleaner equipment, as has the city. I don't understand why the school board can make this a priority, and I'd like to again thank Lori Gallion and Madeline for really looking after our children and our most vulnerable citizens. But the school board made that decision very quickly. Everybody who spoke, I noticed, was a parent. So the tiny marginal profits that somebody might make by blowing leaves into the air until the next time they can come back and blow leaves into the air doesn't justify the kind of continued harassment of the citizens and the residents and the visitors and the children who cannot vote in a ballot measure from gas-powered leaf blowers. And I hope you'll take the lead from the school district and do something quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight to talk about the dog issue. At this appropriate time?
No, that'll be coming up in approximately about 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Bob Edwards, 310 East Napa. I would like to second the suggestion made by SNAUB to frame an ordinance that council could pass to avoid a ballot measure. I think there are a number of you on council who have encouraged compromise on this issue. Others who have wished that we had a mediation kind of program in town to avoid bringing some of these issues before you. I've spent many years as a mediator, and I think this is an opportunity that council should not pass up to craft an ordinance that would ban gas leaf blowers. very similar to that of that the school has passed. As city attorney, I know knows well, one of the results of litigation is there are winners and losers. The same thing applies to a ballot measure. A ballot measure could be quite draconian. For example, one option on that ballot measure should be ban all leaf blowers. If that wins, I should say, that would be quite an interesting development for the landscaping business and for homeowners who want to use leaf blowers. This would be a perfect compromise that many of you have urged us to do. And I heartily recommend that you take this up, craft a compromise ordinance, pass it. That'll allow you to have some, when it does pass, if you do pass such an ordinance, it will allow you the flexibility, or subsequent council of the flexibility down the road to tweak it if it's not going well. A ballot measure allows no tweaking unless the citizens tweak it. That's very costly, and I think in this case very unnecessary. So I recommend an amended ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lynn Clary, and I live at 483 Rosalie Drive, and I've asked this question before, but I'm going to do it again tonight. I have here the City Council meeting minutes from January 5th, 2011. It was a leaf blower meeting like this, like one we had. And at the end of item 7A, which was discussing possible regulation of leaf blowers. It was moved by Council Member Barbos, seconded by Council Member Rouse. You all know how he feels about leaf blowers. To implement an ordinance that would prohibit a person from blowing debris into the street or onto another person's property. The motion carried unanimously. This still isn't in the municipal code, so I don't know how you feel about leaf blowers, but you ought to wonder what happens to their decisions after they leave this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for meeting dedications. Is there any colleague? Councilmember Agramonte.
Thank you very much. I attended a memorial service on November 8th at the Veterans Memorial Building for Lino Michael Sotile. Lino was a Shell Vista firefighter for 6 years. He also was president of the Valley of Moon Aquatic Swim America organization and the treasurer for the Sonoma Valley Firefighters Association. His wife's name is Jennifer. She is a firefighter as well for Oakland and an EMT. He was only 30 years old. And I just wanted to mention his name because I think it was meant for me to be at that memorial service for a lot of different reasons. And just the information about him really was inspirational for such a young man to touch so many people in so many different ways. I felt that I was just really fortunate to be there. Lino Michael Sotile, and I have the information.
Is there any other meeting dedications? Well, as many of you know, this is my last meeting as mayor. On December 7th, we will be appointing a new mayor up here. So I just want to take this time to introduce my fiancée, who I asked on November 14th to be my wife, and on January 9th, we're going to get married. And we're going to have Lori Gallion will be the officiant. And my best man is Tom Rouse. So if you're out there, Tom, he was known. And I'd also like to introduce my new stepdaughter, Genevieve Cacciatorian, who has been sitting patiently for this. So I just want to say thank you. Moving on, we will go ahead and item 3A, proclamation declaring the weekend after Thanksgiving, November 27th through the 30th, 2015, as Shop Sonoma Days. I'm going to go ahead and step down, and then if I could have the council meet me after the presentation, and we will take a picture. So we have Lori Decker and we have Patricia. 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 Lori Whereas the weekend after Thanksgiving is one of the busiest shopping times of the year, and Sonoma residents have many choices as to where to spend their holiday shopping dollars. And whereas Sonoma businesses are essential to the community's vitality and sustainability, and whereas Sonoma businesses provide shoppers with personalized service, often by people we know as neighbors and friends, and offer a pleasant and relaxing alternative to shopping malls. Shopping locally saves time, gas, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas Sonoma businesses provide employment for many Sonoma Valley residents and support for dozens of local schools and nonprofit organizations. Whereas the city of Sonoma relies on sales tax as an essential revenue source for funding services to the community. By thinking local first when shopping for the holidays, residents keep dollars in the local economy, support local jobs, embrace what makes Sonoma unique and special, preserve entrepreneurship, help the environment, and nurture community. Therefore, as the mayor of Sonoma, I hereby proclaim Friday, November 27th through Monday, November 30th, 2015 as Shop Sonoma Days. And thank you, for all you do. Thank you. Mrs. Furley, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, we thank you very much for this, and we have a short video to show. And I would also encourage you to shop local every day, not just during this special week. So if we can show the video.
If I could have my colleagues come down and we'll take a quick picture.
And this banner, I'd point out, will be hanging during Shop Sonoma Days on the Plaza Welcome sign at the entrance to City Hall.
Did you want to come in, Carol? We got city manager.
Awesome. Use the hashtag.
Do you want to take it?
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience on that. Item 3B, presentation of report on options for ending homelessness in Sonoma County by 2025. And as I spoke earlier, I am going to allow, as mayor, 3-minute comments after this presentation. Mr. Luddy?
Mayor Cook, members of the council, thank you very much. I want to also thank Carol for getting us on the agenda. My name is Jim Luddy from the Community Development Commission for Sonoma County, and with me tonight is Deputy Director of the Commission, John Haig, who many may be familiar with. He's done a lot of work with the Commission out here in Sonoma Valley. So tonight is an ongoing process that was launched by the Board of Supervisors acting in their role as the Community Development Commission from a policy document which on August 25th of this year was the culmination of a year and a half's work to come forward with a plan to not only alleviate homelessness, but end it in 10 years across all of Sonoma County, within the cities and in the unincorporated areas. So the first thing that, in order to end something, you have to understand the depth of something. And so based upon the annual federally required homeless count, which is a one night out of the year personal census of our homeless population, we know that from this year's count, we have 3,107 people who are defined as homeless. 1,000 of those sheltered, meaning they live in transitional housing, or they're in shelters, or they're in their cars. Over 2,000 are living outside. Also in one night, over 5,500 people experience homelessness. So by perspective, that's roughly half the population in the city of Sonoma that sometime in the last year were without a home. The good news is this number is down almost a third from the last count. Unfortunately, Sonoma County, in compared to the national average, is about 3 times the national average per capita, a number of people who are homeless to people who are sheltered. When we look at who are the homeless, who are people who are homeless, you can see the large majority, almost 90%, are single adults over age 18, which will become an interesting factor as we go forward with this plan to end homelessness by building homes. That's the focus of this effort. It's not just to have temporary measures, but have permanent measures. We can see that we're dealing with special needs populations that are going to require services such as mental health care, substance abuse care. We're going to have issues of people with health issues who are seniors, and there are families as well that are living on our streets. So we took the opportunity here to, in each of these presentations by city, to break it up by jurisdiction. In Sonoma, the good news is that on the count, within the city limits of Sonoma, there's only 1% of the county's homeless count that was identified. 13 of those 14 people are living outside, and one of which is, 13 of those 27 are living inside, and 14 are living in some kind of temporary housing. When you add in the unincorporated areas of the Sonoma Valley, which is another 4%, you have a total of 5% of the magnitude of the issue that we're addressing, with another 131 people defined as homeless. This is, as was mentioned earlier by some of the public speakers, and for anybody who's lived in Sonoma County, the vacancy rate is one of the major problems that we have in finding people housing. As we'll talk about a little bit later, there are programs that give people subsidies that help them get into housing. However, it requires a working free market, housing market, where there are units available that can be subsidized to get somebody who is homeless or extremely low income into it. Unfortunately, and this number is actually from August, that 1.5% might be high as far as a vacancy rate. A balanced housing market, according to most real estate experts, is usually 10%, right in that range, where you can balance supply and demand. We've seen the increases over the last 10 years, and more importantly, in the last 3 years. So why permanent housing? We've basically 2 reasons. One, federal policy is going in the direction of housing first, which is finding someone a home, getting them off the streets. Now, by a home, it could be a single room occupancy, it could be a shared apartment, it could be a home. But the idea is get them off the streets. There's a stabilization that automatically occurs from someone not having to live outside. And then the second thing is that housing first is a cost saver. When you look at this chart, you can see that someone who's homeless that is in supportive housing for a night, for a day, costs about $31 a day. If they end up in the jail, it's $139. If they end up in the emergency room, it's over $4,000. So if you're able to get somebody into permanent housing, the cost savings to those other systems can be tremendous, even when you factor in the cost of building the housing. So for that 3,107 baseline number that we're operating from, we need 2,200 net new units over the next 10 years, 200 of which will be rehabbed, refurbished, converted commercial, and then 2,000 will be sticks in the ground, actual new units. That will be the way that number, that's what it takes for 3,107 people to be off the street. So what do these units look like? What can they be? They can be portable and permanent. Portable, RVs, trailers, tiny homes that don't have foundations, the idea of cargo container homes, which I'm sure people have read about. What are the advantages? Well, there's mobility. They might be less expensive. Problem is that they mostly don't access federal and state funds, which we need to keep them operational. And there's an aspect of that's really not permanent housing, putting someone in a trailer. They ultimately need to have a greater sense of home. On the permanent side, you can look at single room occupancy in a multifamily or apartment complex situation. You can look at foundation and plumbed tiny homes if they pencil out. These do access funds. They also allow us to better use land inside of urban centers. Problem is, it takes time to build things. And while we're building things as the long-term solution, as the solution we really need, well, we have to focus on the fact that people are suffering right now. As someone mentioned in the public comments about trying to get something open before, something in place that is before to prevent homelessness. You know, we're going into another winter season, depending on which weather channel you listen to, it could be very severe. And what are we doing right now to help people who are on the streets? Interim measures are those programs that we basically have now that we'll have to maintain while we build. And that's a challenge on a resource front. But those interim measures can be the shelters, the safe parking program where people are allowed to sleep in a public parking lot overnight, or perhaps sanctioned encampments where you've got a regulated model of people being able to camp in a coordinated and clean way. So there really isn't funding in the long term for this, but it is the triage while we work on the long-term health of the patient. So it's always good to understand the gap and the barriers on the finance side to building affordable housing. As you can see from this slide, typical affordable housing are about $350,000 a unit. Those are homeless dedicated units, which are smaller and more efficient. They don't have to be large 3 bedrooms. They can be down to 1 bedroom or studios. Obviously, if there are families who are homeless, they need larger spots. When we look at park model homes or tiny homes, the range is in about $172,000 a piece. So we're dealing with a lot of money here and a lot of funds needed. So if we look at those 2,000 new units, and we actually have a broader average that we look at when we look at all types of units, including possibly dedicated rental units within existing houses. Anyway, to bring it all the way down is it's about $160,000 per average unit overall. We have federal and state resources of just over $100,000. And then the local financing needed, that is from the county or from a jurisdiction, is about $55,000. So in very broad terms, we need $110 million new dollars over 10 years. We don't need it all at once, but we need to be bringing in that money to create the building that needs to happen. So what resources do we have available when we're dealing with this gap of need and this gap of cost? We have our financing sources, which is with the more local money we have, we can draw down more federal money. It means we have to hang on to our federal money and be good advocates with the Congress that provides most of our funding through Housing and Urban Development, also with the state where sometimes the voters will pass a ballot measure, or there are measures like the recent $75 per recording document fee, which died for lack of a 2/3, that would have produced about $400 million a year in revenues. Or other programs like Cap and Trade, which is the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Fund, or as I said, called Cap and Trade, which is focused on housing, at least a quarter of it automatically, towards communities that help reduce transportation greenhouse impacts. But we do have local financing options. We have the low moderate income housing asset funds. We have the residual receipts from redevelopment that came back when redevelopment was dismantled and sent back to taxing agency, inclusionary housing fees, linkage to commercial development, Transit occupancy tax. Do you find a way to look at your industries that are producing demand for certain kinds of jobs and tax those industries that are relying on sales tax or on tourism tax or other taxes to pay for the impacts? Enhanced infrastructure financing districts, which were created in 2004, but have not found a single jurisdiction yet which has put them into place, which is a very similar form of increment financing that was like the old redevelopment. And then housing revenue bonds, where you the voters pass a large investment and you get a lot of housing built all at once, and you dedicate either a sales tax or other permanent revenue stream to pay it off. The reason this chart is here, because that's talking about post redevelopment funding, and the role that we want to talk about ultimately is working across jurisdictional lines on this issue. One community may have land but not money. Another community may have the reverse. What can be done at the policy level to leverage both of those to address the issue of the lack of housing for people in those communities? And that's a conversation point that we'll talk about a little bit later. There's private and public-private financing options. Silicon Valley has been a gold standard for this with their private Housing Trust of Silicon Valley, where they had an initial seed financing by the Board of Supervisors and then turned that into 10 times that investment by going to the philanthropic community, and then went to the corporate community and turned that into $200 million. There are also efforts of being able to access endowments, community foundations, and the employment-based visa program is when you have foreign employees who are coming here to work. There is money, there's a way for these sponsoring country to pay to help deal with the fact that employees are coming in on a housing and transportation front. Southern California has done this much more effectively than Northern California. You have to set up a nonprofit corporation that meets the federal standards, but for a lot of access from the Pacific Rim to Los Angeles primarily, you've seen this money go into more infrastructure of roads and other financing, but it can be used for housing as well. Pay for Success is like a social equity bond. Someone invests in you to eliminate a social problem, and then they get a return on investment. It's most like the income tax credit program that we have for affordable housing now, but it's a slightly different model. So you have policy options that every jurisdiction can take a look at. The Sonoma County is going to take a look at looking into impact fees. Right now, many impact fees are capped on their way down as a certain floor that they can't go below because of the number of units. A possible way to increase or reduce the amount of feed cost on the developer is to go to a square footage basis. So they're charged per square foot, so it's not an arbitrary number that no matter how small you get, you're still charging the same amount. In effect, what it would do is it would create more revenues coming in to the jurisdiction, but it would incentivize more units being created as well. Development assistance incentives, being able to take the existing Section 8 vouchers, HUD vouchers as they're sometimes referred to, and dedicating them to projects and housing developments that have homeless housing as a revenue source. These are often called project-based vouchers, and the Board of Supervisors took this action in the last 6 weeks so that there are more vouchers explicitly going to help those people exiting homelessness. Unfortunately, that's a zero-sum game because there's only so many vouchers and there's only so many units, but if you're in a time of scarce resources, it's about establishing priority. Rental assistance, just talked about that. Providing, I skipped over it a little bit, but per unit subsidies, if a local government is able to put more money in to buy down the cost of developing the unit, that clearly is going to help. Use of public facilities. Whether you have abandoned public buildings, you have vacant public land, being able to put that on the table as a resource to buy down the cost of development. Community Development Commission has done this with the Roseland Village Neighborhood Center. They're also working on this in the Springs area. The idea is what resources do we have that can create something that is community good? Land use options, zoning densities, being able to require higher densities for the remaining land that you have. This not only helps make it easier to build and hold people accountable to building that level, it also helps with dealing with state requirements about how many units you've zoned to build. If you've got surplus land, we just talked about publicly owned, making it available for long-term housing, affordable housing specifically. Development readiness measures are taking it one step further, and not only do you own the land, but you're willing to take a piece of land and build the infrastructure up to the ground floor so that that cost is not on the developer. You're basically hooking it up. You're looking at roads, you're looking at electrical, you're looking at sidewalks, plumbing, sewer. That's a cost that then comes off it. It's an indirect subsidy, but it's one that helps make it easier. Regulatory incentives, increasing your density bonuses, looking at your vacant commercial land and how underutilized it is, and the fact that commercial areas may not have many neighbors that are directly impacted by the placement of affordable housing or will have a concern. Housing overlay can allow commercially zoned land to be used for affordable housing. So who can help? And that's why we're here tonight. We have been to Windsor, Healdsburg. You're third on the parade. We're going to Santa Rosa in December and Sebastopol to just introduce this topic. This is not a top-down conversation. It has to be across the board between the political leadership, the communities, the developers, the advocates. Every constituency has to be part of this. So we're starting this engagement process leading towards what we hope will be a county-wide summit that brings everyone together to keep focus on this issue for the longer term rather than during this current housing affordability crisis. We've proposed a cross-jurisdictional leadership group like Sonoma County Transportation Authority, where each jurisdiction would have a standing role in setting policy and driving for common direction. Staffed by multi-jurisdictional group, and then the possibility of having one agency be a regional housing coordinator, so we're not necessarily working at cross purposes and we can be coordinating better. Obviously, one of the first conversations we need to have is about where it's going to go. Is it based upon RHNA numbers, regional housing needs allocation numbers, or is it based upon other factors, the homeless count or available land? Those are all things that need a conversation among the people who are elected and have the ability to make all the decisions. CDC has taken a series of actions to the board already. They've changed those investment policies, so we're doing deeper subsidies for homeless dedicated units, where we've strengthened the rental assistance programs, and two pilot projects have been launched. The first, you may have read about, is measuring the efficacy of an alternative home or tiny homes model. County-owned properties been narrowed down, and an RFP will come out to see if someone can build tiny homes in a way that's less expensive, serves people who are homeless, and creates a better use of land. We're also going to be asking on the 8th of our board for not only the money to implement this whole plan and the investment it takes to do all these different elements, but also looking at those interim measures. Maybe there's models we haven't fully vetted in Sonoma County that might work. The one that we talk about the least, but we deal with the unsanctioned ones the most, are encampments. Is there a way to create a model of a small, sustainable encampment that does not impact and in fact creates a stewardship mindset with the residents and is something that's a value add for their experience, helps them leave poverty, gets them out of under the bridge, and also is better for the community they're in. But also safe parking, looking at conversion of existing warehouses, other commercial spaces. So we also have to have a thorough examination of our revenue sources, and the county administrator's office will be the lead on this, looking at all of these. And when we come to the idea that someone mentioned vacation rentals, looking at TOT generation from vacation rentals as a way to offset or create housing in other areas. That's one area of discussion. But all of these will be examined for their efficacy to be put into place, but also against competing elements. We see the idea of roads and another roads tax, or public safety issues when it comes to gang issues and and then education, of course, and pre-K universal school. So there has to be a prioritization and a discussion by the elected officials. What can we do to reduce land costs? We've talked about some of these. These are actions that in the unincorporated area the board will be looking at. But again, with 80% of the people who are homeless within the cities and only 20%, there's a limited return also with open space and a commitment to agriculture that every community has. We can't exactly sprawl our way out into the unincorporated communities. But we also realize, and I'm getting close to the end, so I apologize for the long-windedness, it isn't just about housing. we have to make sure that people who need housing also have health care and incomes. Every major successful effort has been around building incomes, whether earned incomes, someone has education, then job training, they get a job and they can work, or if they're due benefits, they're a veteran, or they're disabled, or they're a senior and they're not getting them. Because in all of these models, they have to be putting money towards housing. And the other aspect of this is healthcare. The healthier they are, the more they are stable in their housing, the more the chances to work they are. And with a general practitioner model, a medical home, they stay out of the emergency room. There's a gentleman that we've come across in our travels. He's on, he has a severe breathing disability, and he's been homeless because he lost his business during the downturn. He's been in the emergency room in Santa Rosa 4 times in the last 4 months because the car he uses to live in has a charger for his oxygen machine, but it is broken down so many times that he ends up in the ER, and he doesn't have access to health care. And now his car burned up the other day because of an electrical short, and the mayor of Santa Rosa went and visited where he was and brought him a generator. So he's in this stopgap world, but if he was in a $31 a day house with someone who could come and see him, $4,000 a day would be a big savings there. So we know that healthcare is important. We also believe accountability is important. You know, we've given ourselves this time, a decade time horizon, knowing that we have to do something every year, and we have to have benchmarks every year. Even if we don't make them, if we don't have a goal of reaching it, we never will. So we've put up there 3 measurements for that: the number of units, the reduction in the homeless count on an annual basis, the number of people who experience the homeless count. We also have in the actual report issues around employment readiness, healthcare access that are part of the county's health action process. So now we're bringing forward a work plan to the board on December 8th. And I want to again thank the city manager for getting us on the agenda so soon. And we will look forward to engaging with you as the city sees fit on this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I like that you used the word crisis, because the homeless, it is a crisis at this point. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Vice Mayor Gallion?
So, Jim, this will come before the Board of Supervisors on December 8th, and would they be adopting this plan, or is this discussion and direction to you? What is the vote or action on that date?
On August 25th, they endorsed the document. They said CDC, PRMD, county departments go forth. What's coming back on the 8th is we have looked at all the work items in this and say, to make this happen, we're going to need this funding and or staff to implement all of these efforts, including the pilot projects, pulling together the summit, starting to do the analysis of the funding sources so that we're have the resources, because we can't stop the other work that we have to do around creating housing. So it's the implementation of the big plan. The big plan is now policy from the board's perspective.
Thank you very much. An excellent presentation. This is my second time hearing it. I believe the mayor and I were at mayors and council members. And the issue is very compelling. And I know that this is a personal issue on your part as well. And I just want to say thank you for your dedication.
Councilmember Edwards?
Jim, how many affordable units are in the pipeline right now? As you go around the cities, I know we have X amount in our pipeline with the building that's going on.
The county fund for housing actually is going to be on tomorrow's agenda, and I believe that the county-wide total that are in the pipeline is about 302 right now. But that is a range of housing, and since I don't have that Thickle report in front of me, but that's roughly what it is. But that could be, homeless housing, or for people that are homeless, tends to be below 30% of average median income, and that extremely low. But there's also other levels of units that are funded.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Agamate?
Thank you. It's my third time hearing this point. It's getting smooth.
Oh, there we go.
It's looking really good. I just wanted to also add that one of the things I've heard at the Health Action Committee, and I think it was the Health Action Committee, to also include transportation and food in this, because obviously transportation is a huge issue for people who have no access to it. And I think that's one of the things they've been discussing at the Transportation Authority. And it was recognized that people without, any means have issues with that as well. And it's interesting, when I was at the Health Action Committee, I said that I would check on something, and people who are homeless or people who just possibly their credit is not very good because they've had to move on and they couldn't make bills. It's interesting how much banks charge to cash a check in Sonoma. Wells Fargo is $6.50 for one check, for a check. Other places, Safeway, I think it's $4. I think check cashing at Boys Springs is 1% of the check. So if you could imagine $6.50 every time you cash a check every week, what that adds up to. And so these are some of the things that are out there as well. And I'm so excited, I'm really excited about slide 21 with respect to a countywide housing summit. It would be nice if we could perhaps have some type of a consortium created here in Sonoma that will be able to transfer that knowledge to this housing summit as well. I think these are great ideas, and I believe that people have been coming here so often are looking for some kind of answers. So I really believe this is a great start, and I plan to attend the meeting on December 8th because I, like others here, agree that it's a very important issue. So I'm just really pleased. This is something on paper, and, of course, this is the original, and this is just great. I'm really excited about the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you once again. I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment at this time. As a reminder, please state your name, and I'll allow 3 minutes.
Hi, David Eicher. Didn't know I was going to be able to comment, so I didn't prepare anything ahead of time, but I jotted down some notes. And a couple of things that weren't mentioned that other cities I know are looking at, or at least one, San Francisco is looking at increasing the allotment of affordable housing that must be built in new developments, possibly even up to 40%. And there are some developments like the one that the Giants are doing just south of the ballpark, which are going to be that 40%. So that's one thing I think the city can do, as well as the county, et cetera, is to look at increasing that. There's another thing that's already on in the books for the city, and that has to do with the in existing developments for not housing developments, in the other developments, there is a requirement for certain housing units to be included in that development. And so I know there's one project that is currently in the works, that has been for years, that is looking at getting a waiver, a variance, so it does not have to include any housing. So I think, as the city government, we can enforce the rules that we have. That would be helpful. And one other thing, and this is something I actually mentioned here maybe about a month ago in the city council meeting, is one of the topics here was enhance income. As you know, about 14 months ago, the city council asked the staff to get an RFP together about increasing the minimum wage, to have a report on that. That is just sitting. It's not being done, and the information I have, the reason is it has not been funded. So please move forward and fund that, so that we build the homes for the homeless, but as mentioned, they still have to pay. They still have to afford the homes. So if with the minimum wage that is now, that's still going to be very difficult. We need to increase the minimum wage so the houses that are built, the homeless can actually afford. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for the informative emails you send. I do appreciate that.
Bob Edwards, 310 East Napa, Sonoma. I thank Jim for all his good work on this, and I certainly think it's an issue that council needs to take very seriously. I realize that one of the things you're handicapped with is state law, which prevents you from enacting rent control to prevent people from becoming homeless. State law needs to be changed, and anything that council can do with our elected representatives, alleged representatives, to change that state law would be a great step to expand rent control to cover, for example, single-family homes. Right now, they're not covered by rent control, only multifamily units built before, I believe it is, Council, 1995. So most of the homes in Sonoma would not be covered by rent control, but that needs to be worked on. In addition, perhaps another law that needs to be enacted, and perhaps it can be an ordinance, I don't know what council's authority is in this regard, but could be an eviction fee. Any landlord who evicts anyone from their unit for an inability to pay a rent increase should have to pay a fee that could go to fund homeless housing. There could also be, with the help perhaps of the Chamber of Commerce, employers could, that we're certainly able to, and many of them here in town are, to provide housing assistance for their lowest paid workers. That would help them certainly retain employees. If your employer is paying for a percentage of your housing, you're not going to wander off too much, and you're certainly going to behave at work. So perhaps the chamber could supply us with that. When you're looking to place homeless housing, these mini houses we're talking about, we have a lot of vineyards that we really don't need in this valley. And we have a lot of people who want to make a vineyard that go before the PRMD and ask for a permit. It would be nice if the county would have, as a condition of granting a permit, can you set aside an acre or two for these mini houses? That also would be an incentive for many vineyards to be a part of this process. Interestingly enough, I think when it comes to emergency housing for the homeless, it's coming up. This is the season to be very unjolly if you're homeless under a bridge or up on the cemetery right now, or up on Montini right now, where they're camped out. We have, according to the discussion that took place during Measure B, a vacancy rate in local hotels approaching 60% in the winter months. That hasn't been fixed and isn't going to be fixed. It's always going to be there. Wouldn't it be nice if the county could get together with the hotels to screen out these so-called, I will call them potentially troublesome guests, where the hotels could take in for emergency shelter for just a night or two perhaps, or a week or two, some of their many vacant luxury rooms that entire wings of the lodge are empty, or saddles are empty. Would be nice to move a family in. And perhaps an imaginative hotel tax accountant could even find a charitable deduction in that to fatten the bottom line. I'm sure he could. I mean, I would, and I don't even practice in that area. So these are some of the things I think can be explored, and that hotel thing I think could be done ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there any other public comment on this? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Is there any questions, comments? Councilmember Agramonte? Councilmember Agramonte pulled 4E. Is there any other council member or vice mayor that would like to pull an item? Seeing none, I will bring it to public for any comment on items 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, and 4F. Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for discussion and action. Vice Mayor Gallion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar for A, B, C, D, and F.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any other discussion on this item, on these items? City Manager, we have a motion and a second. Could I call for a roll call vote?
Yes. Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallion?
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley?
Aye.
Mayor Cook?
Aye. And for public, we just passed 5-0. Items 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, and 4F, which leaves item 4E, which was pulled by Madeline, or Councilmember Aguamonte, who would like to discuss.
Well, I just ask this to be pulled because I think it's just wonderful, this slurry seal program, and it makes the city look like it's buzzing. So I just really appreciate it. I just had to pull it to let people know how important this is, and especially getting ready for the winter months. And so I'm just really appreciative that this has moved forward. Thank you. And with that, may I make a motion
Yes, you may.
to approve 4E?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, City Manager, we have a motion and a second. Can we call for a roll call vote?
Councilmember Aguamonte.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallion.
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Mayor Cook.
Aye. And for public, it was 5-0, the passage of 4E, which moves us to the consent calendar for the successor agency. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. We have item 5A, approval of the portions of the minutes of the November 2nd, 2015 City Council meeting pertaining to the successor agency. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I will bring it to public for any comment. Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for action or discussion. Vice Mayor Gallion.
I'll go ahead and move to approve the consent calendar and agenda order for City Council as successor agency, item 5A.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. City Manager, could I call for a roll call vote?
Councilmember Aguamonte.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallion.
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Mayor Cook.
Aye. And for public, we have a 5-0 vote on item 5A, which leads us, before the public hearing, I would like to take a 5-minute break. Consideration and possible action to update city fee schedule based on fiscal year 2015-2016 operating budget. Finance Director.
Thank you, Mayor Cook, council members. As part of the council goal of fiscal sustainability, I am presenting to you the annual fee schedule update. The fee schedule was created by the city to for those services that benefit a specific individual or organization versus those services that benefit the public as a whole and cannot be tied to a specific individual. These fees are established in accordance with state and federal law and based on actual costs of providing services. So it's a collaborative effort with all of the departments looking at each fee and the staff time that they expend on the fees, as well as back-end evaluation of other costs to be associated, such as overhead and benefits cost. So during last fee schedule, we identified a number of fee reductions as a result of the implementation of a new software system. This fee schedule sees more fee increases in the range of 10 to 15%, primarily again related to cost increases. But to look at some of these fee increases, a 10% increase may be, for example, $5 on a $50 fee. So an overall summary includes some fees do not change. They're set by state law. There are fees that are set by other entities, such as the County of Sonoma, that sets a number of public safety-related fees, and the Valley of the Moon Fire Protection District, which sets fire protection-related fees, and also the EMS fees, which are general fund revenue. The Valley of the Moon Fire Protection District anticipates visiting their fee schedule at their December meeting. A couple of fees have been added, in particular in the water utility. We've added a fee for turn on and turn off of water service for example, for a new tenant or new resident moving into the area. We find that that has a staff time impact that should be captured and can be identified to a specific individual. We've also changed policy around water deposits. Previously, water deposits were only charged to tenants versus owners, and we've identified that it's more prudent to charge that deposit to any property, to any account holder on an account. Some fees have been just readjusted, so the fee is about the same, but has been moved, for example, from special events into public works to better align and keep track so that there's not disconnects between fees. I did put on the dais a corrected version of the fee schedule. You will find changes to the PD-05 fee, and these are just clerical errors that were made in preparing the index, and in PL-10. So in both cases, the fee is lower than what was typed in previously into the previous version. Again, these are calculated based on looking at the staff time required, the hourly rate of the staff, and adding the overhead costs, both of other staff, of benefits, and operating expenses such as services, supplies, and utilities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the fee schedule.
Councilmember Hunley.
Can you explain the increase in the appeal fee? Is it they're taking more hours than regional than were calculated for last time, or?
So the appeal fee was prior to the 2015 fee schedule. The appeal fee was subsidized, meaning that council direction was to charge less than the actual cost. In the 2015 fee update, council approved setting that fee at cost, which was about $660. And in this fee, the increase is just, again, related to the similar increases for all fees around changes in costs of salaries, benefits, overhead.
Vice Mayor Gallion.
I just wanted to say that this exercise is certainly a lot smoother than several years that I have seen, costs come before us. And I believe we did a majority of our work back a few years ago, correct, on our fee schedule? Was it last year or two that we updated our entire fee schedule? We reviewed it and updated it?
When I arrived, it was actually in very good shape, and we were just looking at refining some things, so it was before my time.
Right. So I think this is excellent that we're keeping up with our standards, because that seemed to be a very arduous process prior to that time, and it's important that fiscally we have a true representation of the services that we are actually providing.
Thank you.
Does any other colleagues on the council have any questions? Thank you, Deanna. I will open public comment on this item. Mr. Eicher.
Mayor Cook, City Council members, David Eicher. And I did send you an email, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much, but in past years, mayors and city council members have encouraged more participation of the residents of Sonoma and the citizens in local government. And appeals of planning commission decisions to the city council is part of the process that the citizens and residents can take to participate in the government. And if the fee becomes too high, then I think that takes away kind of the rights of many people that just would not be able to afford it. And I know in a couple of times the city council has waived a fee, or staff has waived a fee in certain circumstances, but the member of the public shouldn't have to hope for that could happen. I did some research, and there's other cities that do subsidize a fee, and some I found even down, the fee is only $100, and some are $250, $300. And I did find others that look like they're much higher, that they're not subsidizing them. But I also found some cities that would charge residents less than if you were non-resident, or if they would charge the let's say you have somebody that put something in front of the planning commission, for a permit and it was denied, that their appeal would cost more than if it was the non-permit requester, say a citizen coming in and appealing an expansion of the house next door to them. They would charge them less. And so I think that the cities recognize the importance of making government accessible to the residents at a reasonable cost. So I would encourage you to, again, subsidize the fee and possibly going about a $250 fee, because we don't want to make it zero, because then everyone will be appealing everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Allebuck?
Fred Allebach, 19550 8th Street East. I'd like to agree with David, and I have a couple points that I would like to make. The person who made the presentation started out by mentioning fiscal sustainability and services that benefit the public. I just wonder why, if staff is already being paid, in some cases quite a bit, why do they need to charge a fee to do their job? This is city work. Why is it extra? So that just doesn't quite make sense to me. In some cases, some city staff is making quite a bit of money. So I don't see why there needs to be a fee on top of what it's like my mom lives in a retirement community and she's paying quite a bit of money per month, and a lot of money per month, and then they charge her on top of that to go help her fix her internet. Some stuff should be thrown in with the deal. And so I think that something like the fee itself, I agree with David that it shouldn't be nothing, because that would encourage anyone to just make an appeal. But I think that I would go lower than David and say it should be $100, and I would also say that if you win the appeal, you should get all your money back. And then maybe if you lose, then you have to chunk in another 50 or 100 if you lose or something. And I'd also be curious what the city's overhead rate is. I heard the presenter mention that, and so I know that in nonprofits, some nonprofits have a very high overhead rate, and then that your charity money is being wasted on people's salaries and stuff, so that there's an established overhead rate that would demonstrate efficient use of money. So let's see. So I think that's pretty much comments I've got.
Thank you, Fred. Is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for discussion and action. Vice Mayor Gallion.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the license and permit charges for fiscal year 2015 as a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma, amending the previously adopted schedule of user fees. And then after a second, I'd like to have some discussion.
I'll second.
Is there any other discussion on this side? Vice Mayor Gallion, I would like to hear what you have to say too.
Well, in talking about the appeal fees, I do feel, and unless I'm missing on this, there is some council discretion if they felt that they wanted to have some action on that. And I'd like to ask the city manager if that is also something that the council has the power to do.
Well, the council would be the only one that, if you set the fee, the council could, and their discretion is the only one that could reduce a fee based on, if they considered if you're speaking of an appeal, if they felt the circumstances warranted a reduction in a particular fee. So they could do that based on a particular circumstance. So you could do that based on the circumstances of a particular appeal.
So it would be by a motion, and the council would then vote to have a reduction in fee, and that would be a direction to staff, or how would that go about? Just so I understand the process.
Yes, you would have to do that as a part of your action on that particular item.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Hunley.
I think that if we have the discussion about the appeal fee, that we should have it during the next budget cycle, so that we're not we're not reallocating money to a budget that's already been set, but I would be open to having that conversation. And also, overall, it seems to me 10 to 15% is a little bit high, considering our inflation right now is like 2 to 3%. So that part I find a little mystifying, but so I'm hoping that next time this comes around, it's not another 10 to 15% jump every time.
Is there any other discussion? I would like to enter back into the discussion, back to the city manager on the appeal cost. Tonight, as part of the motion, the council would have the direction to lower that?
Well, if you want to lower the appeal fee tonight if you want to make some other direction to staff and lower the fee tonight, overall, and not accept staff's recommendation, because again, staff's recommendation is based on actual cost. If council wanted to create a subsidized cost at a different rate, you could certainly do that tonight before you pass the fee schedule.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what I wanted clarification.
Yes.
Because I do like what one of the public speakers said, and I got a couple emails, and I've been looking at it. I do like the fact having the community involved and the appeal process as part of it, and I understand that some and possibly all might not have the means on some appeals. So I would be open for any discussion on that matter if there was support from the council, or I would agree with Councilmember Hunley that that's something that could come up at the new fiscal budget next year. Councilmember Edwards?
I'd only be open to it and revisiting it at the budget for next year.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we will call for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallion?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunley?
Aye.
Mayor Cook?
Aye. And for public, it was a 5-0 vote on item 6A, the discussion and consideration of possible action to update city fee schedule based on the fiscal year of 2015-2016 operating budget, which moves us out of public hearing and into regular calendar. Item 7A, discussion, consideration, and possible action on a proposed amendment to the management plan for the Montini Preserve to allow the option of leashed dogs on trails with the preserve, including consideration of a resolution making findings as required under the California Environmental Quality Act, and direction to staff to submit a revised amendment to the Open Space District. Planning Director, Mr. Goodison.
Thank you, Mayor Cook, members of the City Council. Well, the city owns the Montini Preserve. We've owned it for a while now. We received it through a transfer from the Open Space District, which acquired the preserve quite some time ago now. But when the city accepted ownership of the preserve, it accepted that ownership with a number of obligations and limitations, and those are contained in various documents, including a conservation easement and a recreation covenant. The conservation easement makes reference to a management plan that the district had prepared for the preserve shortly following its acquisition. That management plan prohibits pets within the preserve, including dogs. Even prior to taking ownership of the property, however, different city councils have been interested in exploring the option of amending that management plan to allow leashed dogs within the preserve. And that is a possibility under the terms of the conservation easement. Under the conservation easement, just to go through the hierarchy, the city must manage the preserve in conformance with the adopted management plan, but the conservation easement also sets forth a process by which the management plan may be amended. And that process involves the review and approval of any amendment by the Open Space District, and that amendment would need to be found to be consistent with the basic purposes of the acquisition of the property in terms of protecting its values. So All of that said, back in 2014, in May and June of 2014, the City Council reviewed a proposed amendment to the management plan and an accompanying environmental evaluation of that amendment. The Council adopted the environmental evaluation, making a finding of a negative declaration, and the Council also voted to direct staff to forward that amendment to basically make that amendment application to the Open Space District. That amendment being to allow for leash dogs on trails within the preserve. Under the terms of the conservation easement, the district couldn't actually consider that application until ownership of the property was transferred to the city, and that didn't occur until November of 2014. And so once the transfer was complete, the district took the application, they reviewed it, and subsequently the district informed the city that the amendment application had been denied, and they cited 4 issues. First, the district was concerned that the proposed enforcement measures were not specific enough. Second, the district requested a determination from a qualified biological consultant that the values of the preserve, including habitat resources and public enjoyment, would be adequately protected. Third, because state parks had indicated that the license allowing western access through state parks property would be revoked if an allowance for leash dogs was implemented, the district stated that an amendment would only be approved on the condition that alternative western access be secured and in place prior to implementing any allowance for leash dogs. And lastly, the district requested a specific commitment restoring the trail segment on state parks property to a natural condition, and also from that point north to a vista point within the preserve in the event that the license on allowing the use of the state park segment was revoked. And we've included the complete letter as part of this packet. So in May of 2015, the council reviewed a revised amendment prepared by planning staff addressing the issues raised by the Open Space District in its letter rejecting that previous amendment. Because the composition of the council had changed since 2014, part of staff's intent in preparing the revised amendment was to provide the council with a clear understanding of the issues associated with pursuing an allowance for leash dogs so that informed direction could be given. In its review of the draft revised amendment, the council expressed the following concerns, the most significant of which was that the council had strong reservations regarding a proposed licensing requirement, as the police chief was concerned that it would actually create more enforcement problems than it would solve. The council also wanted to see greater flexibility as to the number of dogs that might be allowed on the trail, rather than placing a 1 dog per person limit in the amendment itself. And in general, the council wanted to see the amendment language take a broader approach, giving the council greater flexibility in setting detailed standards and requirements. And so with that direction, staff took a step back and reviewed the amendment language in light of that direction. We informed the Open Space District of the council's concern. We informed the biological consultant of the council's concerns. And planning staff had a series of conversations with the police chief about what the police department could commit to doing, because we don't want to present the council with an amendment that can't be implemented. We don't want to present the Open Space District with an amendment that can't be implemented. We don't want to present anybody with something that can't be adequately implemented. So based on our conversations with the police chief, we've come back with a revised draft amendment to the management plan. So just to go through the main elements, many of them are very similar to the amendment that you reviewed earlier in the year. But we have an upfront commitment that an allowance for leash dogs would be prohibited until and unless the city secures permanent ADA accessible western access to the preserve. That access might take the form of a trail connection across the pasture area joining Fifth Street West. That was the connection that was originally envisioned in the management plan. Or it might take the form of a lot line adjustment with state parks in which the existing western access is preserved. Should construction of a new trail segment be required, the city would agree to close the trail south of the pasture overlook to reduce the likelihood of users bringing dogs into state parks, and to restore the decommissioned trail to a natural condition at city expense. The amendment also includes protection measures for sensitive areas. Dogs would be required to be kept on a leash not to exceed 6 feet and under the control of their owners at all times. Persons with dogs would be restricted to trails. And the council would define a limit on the number of dogs a person could bring on the trail. Dog owners and individuals accompanying dogs would be required to clean up and remove dog waste, and a bag dispenser would be placed at the main trailhead. Dogs would be prohibited within the preserve a minimum of 2 days a week, and the police chief asked me to emphasize that he is concerned that this approach would lead to confusion and enforcement issues, and he would prefer that any restrictions be either or. That is, dogs would either be allowed on the trail or they would be prohibited. But based on our discussions with district staff, it's the view of planning staff that having dog-free days would be a requirement of the open space district. And so we've left that in this draft for your consideration. Dogs would continue to be prohibited on the Sonoma Overlook Trail. Prior to implementing any allowance for leash dogs, the limitations and requirements that we've just reviewed would be codified in the municipal code. In terms of enforcement, community service officers would include the preserve in its routine patrol activities, visiting the trail system an average of 2 days per week, May through October, and an average of 1 day per week, November through April at a minimum. Community service officers are empowered to issue citations and require the removal of persons violating the limitations and requirements associated with leash dogs. And that language actually, even with the discussions that we had with the police chief, hasn't changed that much from the amendment that you looked at several months ago. The frequency hasn't been altered in terms of the average level of patrol activity. This language, I want to emphasize, is intended to be flexible. A patrol might take the form of a CSO walking the complete trail or spending some time at the trailhead. It might take the form of doing a quick check-in at the trail. CSOs have a variety of different enforcement obligations, and we want to make sure that we aren't building in requirements that we can't meet. So this language is something that we and the police department can commit to. Consistent with the approved maintenance plan, volunteer patrols will be used to monitor compliance and assist in education. And volunteer patrol leaders will share monitoring reports and report enforcement issues to community service officers. Prior to implementing any allowance for leash dogs, now we're on to monitoring. The city, in consultation with the Open Space District, would prepare a baseline report documenting features within the preserve that could be adversely affected by an allowance for leash dogs. And following the commencement of an allowance for leash dogs, the city would submit annual monitoring reports documenting compliance with the limitations and requirements, any changes to conditions in the baseline, identified in the baseline report, and any recommendations for additional restrictions or changes in management. And that, when I say those annual reports would be submitted, they would be submitted to the Open Space District. Because the Open Space District, if it determined, based on substantial evidence is provided through those monitoring reports, that the identified conservation values of the Montini Preserve are being unacceptably compromised as a result of an allowance for leash dogs, the district would have the authority to require further restrictions or to revoke the allowance entirely. So those are the main features of this revised amendment. I want to just dwell on the issue of western access for a moment. Again, a portion of the trail, namely the connection to 4th Street West, goes through State Parks property. Dogs are not allowed on State Parks property. And the superintendent of State Parks has informed us that if the city were to implement an allowance for leash dogs on the Montini Preserve, that the license that currently allows that connection to be made to 4th Street West would be revoked. It's a revocable license. It's State Parks property, and it's their perfect right to do that. So again, the district is insistent that prior to any allowance for leash dogs, there must be secured western access. And again, that could take two forms. One would be a lot line adjustment that would basically be implemented in cooperation with state parks, kind of a like land area for like land area property swap that would maintain the existing trail alignment. The other option is a new trail connection through the pasture property to connect with Fifth Street West, which would also require the development of a new handicap parking space, because obviously the one on 4th Street West would no longer serve that purpose. Now, on the one hand, the lot line adjustment is far and away the preferred option because it protects this existing investment. We're looking at a trail connection that is working well. We wouldn't have to build a new facility. As the council is aware, there was a lot of neighbor unhappiness with the idea of a connection to the pasture. That issue is avoided. That said, I think it is relatively unlikely that the lot line adjustment would occur because the district director of state parks has made it clear that she's very skeptical that this would qualify for a lot line adjustment under the parameters that are set forth in state law. If we were talking about to private property owners, the requirements for a lot line adjustment are there, but they're relatively straightforward and could easily be met in this circumstance. But we're talking about two public entities, one of which is state parks. They have a lot of rules that are designed to protect their land. They can seem labyrinthian and they can seem excessive, but they're in place to protect the public property. And in her view, and I have no reason to doubt her, she's, again, skeptical that this particular set of circumstances would qualify for a lot line adjustment. But it hasn't been ruled out, and so moving on to costs, we include both of those options in our summary of financial impacts, which range from $37,000 to $127,000. With the lot line adjustment, western access representing that lower number, and a new trail segment through the pasture property representing the higher number. And then there are some fixed costs that would be in place no matter what. And I'd like to emphasize, and I think was stated in the supplemental report, that these are preliminary cost estimates. We haven't retained a trail designer to fully validate the cost of a trail through the pasture connection. We take things one step at a time in terms of the level of research that we do and the level of time that we spend on the items that we present to the council. Here we're talking about concepts. These are conceptual cost estimates. And just before concluding, just in a partial response to some of the emails that the council has seen, I certainly don't believe that we're sugarcoating the issues associated with an allowance for leash dogs on the Montini Preserve. We're presenting you with costs that are substantial, even at this preliminary stage. Even the lower cost is substantial. And we're not pretending that under this amendment, if it were to move forward, that things on the Montini Preserve would be perfect and that you would never see an unleashed dog or that you would never run across dog waste within the preserve. Those things would happen. Those things happen today, even with the dog prohibition. There is no perfect enforcement. There can't be. And that isn't the standard, at least in terms of how this amendment would be evaluated. This amendment would be evaluated by the Open Space District in terms of whether or not It would substantially protect the conservation values of the preserve, and it's staff's view that this would do that. And in part, we're able to reach that conclusion because there is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a nuclear option here. We're doing monitoring, and if that monitoring demonstrates to the district that it's not working, they can remove that allowance. And so it's our view that while there's no way to know until we ask, that this amendment does have a reasonable chance of being approved by the Open Space District. That said, even if this amendment were approved by the Open Space District, that doesn't answer the question of what would happen on the Montini Preserve. It just puts the question in front of the City Council. It means that the council could then ask itself that question and would have to answer that question. The council, if this amendment were adopted by the Open Space District, would have that choice. And we don't know tonight what that choice would be. Presumably the council would be asking us for additional information, for example, more detailed cost information about the Western Access. But that particular choice remains ahead in this process. And, one other point. The review by the biological consultant will occur once we have an amendment that the council likes. In other words, if and when you bless this amendment to move it forward to the Open Space District, we'll also refer it to PCI and have them evaluate it. I've told the director of PCNI where things stand on this amendment, that the council didn't feel that the license issue was enforceable and was going to be removing it, and that the council also wanted to see some broader language. And what will come out of their review of it is whatever will come out of their review of it. But again, with the option to terminate the allowance, I am reasonably hopeful that both PCI and the district would be satisfied with the adequacy of this proposed amendment. That said, this is a matter of council discretion. It's a matter of pure policy on the part of the City Council. Staff does not have any particular view or recommendation on this issue. We are simply awaiting your direction. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for all the work. I know city staff has spent a lot of time on Montini. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to briefly mention and reiterate what David has said. I think it's important that we understand what's not before the council tonight. And not before the council tonight is whether or not to allow dogs on Montini, because the council doesn't have that authority to allow dogs on Montini. That is totally, completely out of your hands. When the city accepted the title of this property, it was already burdened by a management plan that had been in place for a number of years, adopted by another agency. It also accepted a conservation easement and a recreation covenant, all of which significantly constrain the ability of the city to use this property. The city really is more or less a custodian for this property. The city is there to basically hold it and manage it pursuant to plans that were already in place. And one of them is the management plan, and as David has said, it prohibits dogs leashed or unleashed. The thing before you tonight is whether or not you want to change the plan or actually propose a change in the plan to the Open Space District Board. It does not have to accept your proposal. It can reject it or return it with additional conditions, because it's the power here. It's the agency that possesses the power as to whether or not dogs would be permitted. So David has drafted an amendment to that plan. It's a proposal, and it's up to the council to decide, first of all, whether it even wants to submit a request to amend, and if so, what should it look like? Thank you.
Thank you. And as I was saying, thank you for staff. This Montini has been going on for a long time. We'll open up questions to staff. Is there any colleagues that have a question for staff at this time? Councilmember Hunley?
So is one thing that we need to decide is whether to put the limitation of no dogs 2 days a week, or is that something that's in there?
Well, right now, it reads, the amendment that is before you as a draft reads that dogs would be prohibited within the preserve 2 days a week. But I highlight that provision because you might want to change it. You might want to change any of the provisions of the amendment. That's something that the police chief stated that he was concerned about, and I wanted to pass that on.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other questions of staff before opening public comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and open up public comment, and we will, please state your name and...
David.
Oh, state your name when you come up, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and your address, please.
I live on Beasley Way. I've been in Sonoma a little over 17 years. It's a wonderful city, and I thank you.
Could you repeat your name for the city clerk?
David Segal, S-E-G-A-L, and I know you. And that's the only second meeting I've ever been to in 17 and a half years.
Well, welcome.
I thank you. I love the city, and you guys do a great job. I do a lot of hiking. By the way, I love dogs. I owned a dog. There was a place to take him for a walk when he was still alive, and I had nothing wrong with dogs. I led hikes for the Sierra Club. I'm on your trails 4 or 5 or 6 days or 7 days some weeks, and there are other people. It changes the experience if there's a dog. I've been on trails which permit dogs. They have to be leashed. You can't police that, especially when you get far from the parking lots. They're off leash. And usually they're behaved and they're fine, but trails are narrow. And if you hear a dog, and that's part of the beauty, and you met on one side of a turn, you don't know if it's leashed or not. And even if it's leashed, and even if it's on a 6 or 5 foot leash, it's close to you. It just changes the experience. And I strongly suggest that you don't make this recommendation to go ahead your proposal. It's just a separate entity for people to walk. You put together Martini and the Overlook Trail, and you have a nice 2-hour round-trip walk. If there's dogs on half of it, you're limiting yourself. You know, it's continuous. There's a connection now over the road, and it's wonderful. What you have here is priceless. Build places, if there's not enough for the dog population, build some places for them where they can run around in circles. And it's not an open field. A narrow trail, and part of the beauty with turns and whatnot, there's just a difference. And I really appreciate it if you consider not pushing this forward. And I thank you very much, and thank you for the great city you all run.
Thank you.
Bob Edwards, 310 East Napa. I want to start by thanking staff for all their very hard work on this. They've been working on it for 6 years. And I think they've done a marvelous job going back and forth with the Open Space District, which, by the way, has imposed more stringent requirements on Montini Preserve than they have imposed on any other preserve where dogs are allowed. And dogs are allowed on most open space preserves, leashed dogs. I'd also like to thank City Attorney for clarifying what's before you tonight. You're not being asked to allow dogs on Montini. You're just being asked to allow for permission to consider allowing dogs on Montini. So that's all that's before you tonight. We can have another discussion on whether they should be allowed on Montini. I think I won't repeat what I've also put in a binder to each of you back in May. I think if you read that, you'll get the gory political history, the back and forth, the Game of Thrones, if you will, that's going on between state parks and SEC and the city council. I won't go into that. Let me just say to you that I think you have before you about 4 options. And I hope I'm not like Rick Perry and miss one. But let me just say the first option you have, obviously, say no. We're going to take staff's work, throw it out the window, and just say, no, we're not even going to ask for permission to amend this plan. I think that would be unfortunate. It would tie your hands and the hands of future council to make a decision on that. I think the second option you have is to vote to exactly do what is before you, and that is to move this request to the Open Space District and ask them to approve the amended management plan, which would give you the flexibility in the future to make the decision. The third option that you have is to to not do this and simply decide, well, we're going to open up the Overlook Trail to dogs, to leash dogs. Because guess what? Overlook is city property. It doesn't belong to the open space. They have no say-so over what you do on it. You don't need no stinking management plan to allow the dogs on Overlook, which is, by the way, how all this started 6 years ago, when dog owners asked to be permission to go on Overlook Trail, and the then council said no, but when Montini comes open, we can talk about Montini. So that's when Montini came open the following year, we started talking about it. The fourth option that you have is one you've taken with the leaf blowers so far. Put it on the ballot. Dog lovers would have no problem putting this issue on the ballot. Yes or no, dogs on Montini. Yes or no, dogs on Overlook. We're not very confident how that vote would go. And because we know we've got at least 2,100 dog owners in the city, all of whom vote. So I think those are the four issues you have. But I recommend that you pursue the one that staff has spent so much time preparing and so much energy into it and a lot of consideration. They've established a pretty fair relationship with the Open Space District, which is tough to do because some of the people up there, quite frankly, aren't very bright. Well, let's not say that. Let's just say when it comes to thinking, they have a lot of bad luck. So I think that I recommend you go forward and have this plan approved to send on to the Open Space District to get the management plan amended. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have a question for city staff. Is the light outside on in the foyer? It looks off. We're continuing public comment.
Michelle Ritchie, R-I-C-H-E-Y. I just want to say what Bob just said, but real short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Brantley, 405 2nd Street East. I am a professional dog trainer. I'm the vice president of Sonoma Valley Dog, and I'm also a 15-year docent of taking kids on hikes at Bouverie Preserve. So I've got 3 points. First point is, if I take you on a hike with my dog, I guarantee we will see more wildlife than if I take you on a hike with 50 third graders. Point one. Point two, I can take the pessimist view or the optimist view about allowing dogs on one of our trails. And the pessimist view would say, people are up there anyway, as Mr. Gittison has pointed out. As a good girl, I would not take my dog up there anyway. I know people do. Prohibition didn't work. People still drank, they still made booze, they still distributed booze. People are still going to take their dogs up there. Once the powers that be recognized that prohibition didn't work, alcohol was allowed, but it was regulated. So that's the pessimist view. Do it because people are going to do it anyway. The optimist view, however, takes a look at this amazing set of trails that we've got within walking distance of the plaza and says, wow, we have got a unique opportunity here to encourage people to come to Sonoma, not only to drink the wine, but also to use our natural resources. So we can either say completely no, or we can say we've not only got natural resources out there, but we've got 2 trail systems that have got a natural division. If we allow people to come up on one trail system with their leash dogs and not on the other trail system, then we've got the best of both worlds. We can have the diversity that we're pretty darn good at. Sonoma's a great place to come regardless of what gender you are, what gender orientation you are, what color you are, and why not, whether or not you're a dog owner or not. We've got the opportunity to provide that diversity in that particular arena. Thank you.
Thank you. We're continuing on public comment. Can I have a raise of hands of how many individuals are going to speak tonight on this item? Thank you. I see about 7.
Hello, my name is David Brown. I live at 393 West Spain. I've been living and working in Sonoma for 28 years. I'm a dog lover. I've owned 7 dogs. My family has owned 7 dogs over the years. I haven't had one for about 20 years. I'm thinking of getting one. But I wanted to share a little bit about a personal experience I had on the trail. Over the last 6 or 7 weeks, my wife has been encouraging me to lose 20 pounds. So I've started walking up the Montini Ranch Trail. I go 3 to 4 times a week. Man, I've seen unbelievable sights. It's a truly unique experience. I've seen wildflowers and meadows and clouds and fog and drizzle recently, grasslands, views, sunsets, oak trees, rock formations, lizards, squirrels scampering up a tree on several places along that trail. Snakes, I saw a rattler. Flocks of birds, a covey of quail jumped up next to the trail when I was going up there. Even wild turkeys. I've seen them all. It's a wildlife preserve. Others have told me they've seen coyote and bobcats and ticks. I'm afraid of ticks when we hear so much about them. I wear long pants. I recommend you guys do too. And I recommend everyone here go up and walk up those trails. I took a friend of mine, a golf pro, Chris Moe, for a walk up there. And then halfway through, he says, Dave, I've never experienced anything like this. I walk 5 miles a day on golf courses, but it's not anything like this. I feel like an Indian up here. I feel like this is 2 centuries ago. I feel like I'm thinking now with my right brain, not my left. I spent all day on cell phones and rational thinking. I feel like up here I'm an Indian or even a panther walking through here. Did you notice scat on the trail coming up? I said, yeah, you know, I've seen scat. To those of you who don't know what scat is, it's wild animals marking their territory. In fact, their hunting territory. I'm walking here. This is my space. I'm hunting here. Stay away. It's an incredible experience walking up that trail. I'm hooked. I'm going to lose 40 pounds, not 20. It's far, far away from the life of cars and buses and motorcycles and bikes, leaf blowers, skateboards, shouts, and, well, dogs. I love dogs. I love dogs barking and bounding and licking and pulling and gasping and sniffing and peeing. I love dogs. I asked my 15-year-old about the controversy. He's been up that trail twice.
You have 20 seconds.
Yeah. He says, seriously, Dad, do you think someone is going to carry a steaming baggie of shit for a mile and a half down and over that trail and back? Because you know a dog, the minute he gets in there, he's going to crap in 100 yards. Please not. Let's ruin this step back in time into nature. Save this for us.
Thank you. And congratulations on the fitness. That's good. I lost 50 pounds, gluten-free.
My name is James Nelson. I live here at Sonoma at 436 Montini Way. And by the way, you will lose those 40 pounds. I lost 30 taking petitions up there from January to May through April of this year. And the petition was to this council, requesting council, advising council, to support the preservation land policy uses of the Montini Preserve and not allow dogs or try to allow dogs on the trail. All of these petitions have been recorded with the city. It is apparent to anyone who's hiked the trail, and I hike it almost daily, sections of it, that this trail was not built to safely accommodate dogs. Sorry, it just was not built that way. And that's the way the Open Space District planned it, because it is a preserve. Up to now, this issue has been framed mostly as pro-dogs versus no dogs. This framing misinforms all of us of what we're dealing with here. Vice Mayor Lori Gallion, eloquently spoke of the real core issue at the May meeting when we last discussed this issue. She identified that it is conservation, pure and simple. Nothing more, nothing less. Conservation. The ownership of the Montini Preserve was transferred to the city from Open Space District with the permanent in perpetuity easements intact. And it was accepted by the city that way. That easement is what protects the preserve for future generations to enjoy. And that's what I'm thinking about. Not
Please
only
direct
ourselves, but the future
direct
generations.
the council, please.
If the city council creates precedents that it has the ability to move to amend the management plan that emanates directly from the easement, then any future council will perceive that it too has the right to seek changes to the management plan and the easement to gratify any new lobbying group of their day. That would expose the preserve to changes with each new election cycle. What a shame that would be. And then over the years, where will the permanent protection of our pristine preserve have gone? Out the window. I urge all council members to rally round and support the permanent conservation values now in effect on Montini. Support them. Stop this costly, divisive, and time-consuming attempt to get the Open Space District to amend and dilute the conservation protection of this preserve. Please stop it. Rather, embrace the conservation easement and management plan. Set a local example, David, local example, and make local precedents, generation of local precedents that secures the Montini Preserve for those who will come after us. We owe it to them. It's not about dogs, pro-dog versus no dogs. It's about conservation. And we happen to have the luck and the serendipity to have been granted the ownership of this property. And we must safeguard it in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, no clapping. If you do support, just do that with your hands.
Hi, I'm Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East, and I've been involved with this issue for a number of years, and I've studied it fairly closely, and I feel like I know a lot of the issues fairly well. So when I read through the new draft amended management plan, I felt like that it did not have a reasonable chance of passing at the district for a number of reasons that I've shared with you. Now, I may not have got everything right, but I think I'm pretty right on this, and I believe before the first amendment management plan was passed, I said many of the same things, and it came back. So I think that I've got a reasonably well-educated position on this. One of the bases that I'm speaking of is the enforcement, and the district asked for specificity, and the district's frequently asked questions webpage and Bill Keene's 2215 rejection letter of the first amended management plan, he laid out quite specifically what he was asking for specificity. And so with the enforcement, what I figured out is that 1 or 2 hours a week is not enough to ensure that dogs will be on leash, which everyone agrees would be a significant impact. So I'm just not persuaded by that. That to me, that does not add up to what the district asked for was strict compliance and strict enforcement and substantial compliance. How could that possibly be about 2% of the time? I would think that substantial compliance would be more like 85 or 90% of the time, which would mean that you would have enforcement off there quite a bit. I also forwarded to the council my analysis of that the trail was designed as a hikers-only trail, as a pedestrians-only trail, and that's its designed use. And so you can't change the managed use in midstream once the trail is already built on the ground as a hikers-only trail. No, I didn't find that address anywhere in the current amended management plan of the district specifically mentioned in the frequently asked questions that said that it was built for hikers only. So where in the amended plan does it say that that when you switch the use, how is this trail just supposed to switch from class 1 to class 3 with no widening or without changing the conservation easement? I didn't find that to be that's kind of a big unknown. I don't understand why that's not in the amended management plan currently when the district clearly mentioned that. I also think that the PCI study has been minimized and that the conclusion where they said there would be widespread and long-lasting impacts on the preserve is a rather serious statement. And I think that means what it says. Excuse me?
5 seconds.
5 seconds? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we don't have the timer tonight because of the city clerk, but yeah.
5 seconds.
You can go on for 30
Okay.
more seconds.
Okay, well, I think that's grossly unfair for the amount of time that I've invested in this issue to only get 3 minutes and then I got 5 seconds and I can't make my points in front of you. I can hardly believe it. It really makes me sick. But my conclusion is say that I think that the preserve is good, all good now. There's no extra cost. And you're just going to open up a lot of trouble if you take a plan that's going to allow dogs and then they're going to bleed over onto the Overlook Trail. So I would suggest that you send this back to staff to strengthen it up along all the points that I've mentioned, or I don't believe it will pass. And if the plan can't be strengthened up, because the police chief can only commit to what he has for enforcement now, that can't possibly be strict. It can't possibly be substantial compliance. So I would suggest that tonight someone make a motion, say that you accept the original management plan and there will be no amended management plan for the preserve tonight.
Thank you, Fred, and I apologize, but I have to give equal time to all. And I know you've done a lot of work, so. It's, believe me, when I became mayor, I had this installed because I saw other mayors. This is my last night. Gay Johan was unable to be here. I wish that we had this because I would probably not run the meeting without it next time.
Hello, Mayor Cook and members of the City Council. My name's Carol Marcus, 873 First Street West. I'd like to just read a letter that was sent to you earlier this afternoon to get it into the public record. My mother celebrated her 90th birthday last month. Up until 7 or 8 years ago, she still felt confident enough to hike the Sonoma Overlook Trail with me. She would be very cautious, watching every step over every rock. It took us quite a bit of time to get to the top. Reaching the top gave her such a sense of accomplishment and brought back memories of family hikes when she was a much younger woman. Had the Montini Preserve been open to the public for hiking at that time, I would have been happy to take her there as well. My mom is, and always was, petrified of dogs. When we walk on the sidewalk together now, she literally stops dead in her tracks when she sees a leashed dog approaching, and stands motionless until the dog has passed us. She is ill at ease with anything less than a 10-foot radius between herself and a leashed dog. To say that dogs induce a sense of anxiety in her is an understatement. I would have never taken her hiking on the Overlook Trail had dogs been allowed there. I would not have subjected her to that. Many of us hike in beautiful places as a way of reducing anxiety. I'm sure that my mom isn't the only person, younger or older, who's afraid of dogs. If the Open Space District and the City of Sonoma truly want to make the Montini Preserve accessible and for the enjoyment of the entire community, then please do not make it inaccessible to those who would otherwise enjoy it, were it not for the allowance of leashed dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. We will continue with public comment.
Good evening, Rich Lee, 524 East MacArthur Street, also co-owner of Arroyo Veterinary Hospital and president of Snow Valley Dog Owners and Guardians. I'd like to urge the council to adopt the amendment to the Montini Management Plan, which would simply allow this process to proceed to the next step and is, of course, not a final decision. It seems a reasonable set of restrictions to me that would allow people the option of having leash dogs on the Montini. I'm going to just summarize what I think are my top 5 reasons why we should continue with this process and why dogs should be allowed on Montini. Leash dogs are allowed on many park trails in the North Bay area, and already there's no reason it can't be done in Sonoma as well. There's already a trail which doesn't allow dogs, so why can't this be the dog-friendly option? Already dogs on Montini and Overlook, there are already dogs on Montini and Overlook, of course, and wouldn't we be better off, as Ellen Brantley pointed out, by recognizing this reality and working with dog owners through education and monitoring to mitigate any potential effects of dogs on the trail by regulating it. Also, by restricting the use of the trails to only people, you are restricting use by many people who would only be able to use the trail or would only use the trail with their dog. And my last point is one that maybe hasn't been brought up too much, but our organization is currently working to promote Sonoma as a dog-friendly community. There are many cities and towns who do that currently, including, of course, San Francisco, and there are many people who are going to be driving up here with their dogs in terms of and looking for places that are dog-friendly. So it's an opportunity to market Sonoma as a dog-friendly community. So this symbol that we have come up with, a window decal, is a way of helping to make that more visible for businesses and for local businesses. So I just want to say that that's a point that's important to consider when we're taking everything else in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue public comment, and at 2 minutes, when you have 1 minute left, I will raise this.
All right. I'm Claudia Robbins. I live at 19167 Robinson Road here in Sonoma. I'm actually opposed to the request to go forward with an amendment because I think it's a huge waste, in a way, of council, city, and staff time and money. And people have spoken to the enforcement as being an issue that may be very difficult and not approved by the Open Space District. We're talking about, can we make an amendment that's possible, that can be approved by the Open Space District? I've been a volunteer steward, sort of, on Montini since we first had this property, long before since the Open Space District first had this, long before there were trails. And I know how long it took to get a 4th Street access through the state property. That was a huge, huge accomplishment. I think, as David Goodison said, that access is a major problem, and that's where we're talking about time and money, especially. It's very unlikely the state parks will approve any kind of lot land adjustment. So we're talking about building a new trail or cutting off that 4th Street access. This is, I think it's just unreasonable, and that we have to say, the neighbors didn't want that 4th Street access. Mr. Montini didn't want that. It involved building a fence to keep out the cattle. And then you have a lot of more construction to do to cover up the existing trail through state parks land. I think before you proceed, it's not about dogs only. It's about, is this really feasible, right, in terms of time and money? And so it's important, as Fred Alabak said, to make a decision. Are you going to go forward, time and money, or are we going to say, I think we have to consider that an amendment is very unlikely to be accepted by the Open Space District. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing public comment.
Hello, Mayor Cook and council members. My name is Andrew Sawicki, and I live on Montini Way. And we have a beautiful trail there. We have a preserve, I underline that. Not only for the trail, we have for the cows and the meadow. I mean, the entire environment around there is very, it's bucolic. I mean, it's wonderful. It's very, gives people much more ease when they go up. I spend a lot of time on the trail. I see a lot of wildlife. I mean, it's a place to go and meditate. It's a place for us to really enjoy what we have in our community. I think there is a place for dogs, but this is not it. And we shouldn't start a new level of bureaucracy, which it would take in order to enforce this, because the enforcement of this would be, it's not possible. It's not possible. With the open land, the meadow in the back, the trails that are very narrow, and many times when I go up there, you have people going in both directions, and someone has to set aside to allow the next through. So dogs along with this in the mix, it's just not plausible. So I'd say we have perfection now. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Clary?
I'm Len Clary. I live on Rosalie Drive. Just like to say I was at a meeting on another open space preserve about 6 weeks ago, and Bill Keene spoke about these management plans and conservation easements and what goes into creating one. And they're not something you just pull out of the air. Each piece of land is different. They got input from all kinds of agencies, all kinds of experts. Neighbors, they look at history. They look at where the property is, what's next to it on both sides, how it relates to everything. So they're all different. And I wish you could have been there to hear all this. I can't remember all the details because I'm over 60 and don't have enough time to talk about it here. But there's a lot, and you would know more about what it is that you're tinkering with here. It is not something simple. It's very complicated. The roots to it are very deep. Heard a lot of comment about, well, this was designed for state parks, and state parks didn't take it, so now we got it. So that changes everything. That doesn't change hardly anything. It's a lot more complicated than just who owns it. It's about that piece of land itself, and who owns it doesn't have that much to do with it. I've heard some other comments. One is if you do send this forward and you do get it, you're going to have to deal with the hairball of going through the 5th Street West pasture, which was quite contentious years ago. Some of you weren't here, so you don't know what was going on. And there's an estimate of $127,000 to go through there. I think that's low. I think that estimate is old. And you have to look at your costs are going to be much higher than you think, and you're going to have a bigger fight. And I'm wondering, what is this all about, and who's it for, and why are we going forward with this? We got $12.5 million in grants for this preserve, and it's working perfectly. I see a lot of happy people. I see dog owners up there. And when I walk down the bike path, I see people walking their dogs. I see dogs that I know can't make it up there. I see people that I know can't make it up there. So I'm wondering, just who is this for, and how much are we spending it for? I don't think we should go forward with this. We've already spent a lot of money and time. Why don't we just put that money towards affordable housing? There's been a lot of talk about that. This is working perfect. Why do we want to mess with it? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Leaf blowers and Montini in one night. I'm Lisa. I am I'm a steward and a docent at Montini, and I'm also a docent at Bouverie. I can tell you that no biologist at Bouverie would ever take their dog up on a trail at Bouverie Preserve. It's absolute no-no. They adhere to the same kind of environmental cautions that we are asking you to respect here. I also want to echo Carol Marcus Willer's comment about people who are dog phobic. I always had a dog growing up. I brought that dog everywhere I was not supposed to bring her because I lived near Mount Tam, and she was my constant companion. But I have a 13-year-old child who was run down at a park here by a dog and attacked, who is extremely, extremely phobic of dogs, not afraid, phobic. And the Overlook Trail, which is used as a system with Montini, you cannot separate them. That's not how people use those trails. Is the only place in the valley that I can take her hiking, and a friend. And there are a lot of people who are phobic of dogs, and they haven't had a real voice in this discussion. So I'm up there 3, 4, 5 times a week. I talk to people. I also set up the Facebook page and the website for the trails, and I answer a lot of questions from the public about the dogs and send them to our Why No Dogs on Montini page, and I'm able to educate a lot of people about the conservation easement and what's gone into this. And I would say in all these years, I've only had one person who was really upset about that. So I do use and I'm a volunteer, I use the website and the Facebook page to reach out to people and tell them why. And for the most part, people are very happy to know that they're leaving their dog at home for the protection of other animals and birds and plants that have to survive up there. And it is an absolute gift. It's working perfectly. You have a wonderful team of volunteers. I've seen increased use over the years, and why mess with something that's working so well? And I encourage you not to pursue this amended management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
My name is Tiari Welch. I live on Malay Street. I wasn't planning to speak on this, but I really feel it's valuable to be a dog-friendly environment, but I don't think the trail system is the place for that. But, if there's money to be spent, maybe it could be used to create a place where dogs could run free. I mean, I personally don't like to see dogs on leashes tugging along. It doesn't look great for the dog. It's not really that good of an exercise, I don't think. But if there was a place that, was vast, like a large field that somehow could be fenced in, that they could have just run, like a big place, not a little place, closer to town in a flat area, that might be a better place for dogs, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other public comment? Before closing public comment, if you would like to come back up and spend your 1 minute, Fred, I would allow that.
Thank you. That's very nice of you, David. Thank you.
I want to make sure that I did the timer right.
Okay.
I did not become mayor to be a timekeeper, so I'm unsure.
I appreciate that. I'd like to mention that the Montini easement is a different easement than Taylor Mountain, and Montini has as its first priority natural resources, then viewshed, then recreation. Taylor Mountain was designed as multiple use. This had a whole different ballgame. And so there's a hierarchy of values in this conservation easement that says that if there's a conflict of uses, then it will default to the top use, then the second use. So the third use on Montini is recreation. So as the district gets this is the exact type of conflict that they're going to default to and say, well, natural resources are going to take precedence over recreation. And if you look at recreation in the conservation easement, it says that would be looking at birds, studying nature, and so you put dogs on there, it's going to scare away birds and prevent people from studying nature. So it just doesn't make sense to me that you're going to put in a management plan that's going to do that.
Thank you, Fred. Is there any other public comment?
Taking this opportunity. My name's Leslie Murphy, and I live on Austin Avenue. When the Overlook Trail first came around and they didn't allow dogs, I thought, how can that be? You have to have a dog, your dog. And then I found out about nature, and I want to leave some things alone. I love dogs, but I don't think I'm so happy that there's a place where they don't have dogs and it's nature. And thank you so much for all of this. It's awesome to hear people talk, and thank you. But no dogs live there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Hunley.
Thank you to everyone who took the time to come out and speak to us. It's hard to think that it's been 6 months since the last time we've had this conversation, so it's nice to see your faces again. I think that there's a lot of great points on both sides, and perhaps one day we will be diving into each of them. But as I said the last time in May, that when I joined office, there was this certain level of momentum going with this project from the community who's been behind this effort and the staff who's been working on this, and then the previous council who had been working on this amendment. And I thought the feedback that we got from the Open Space District before May was enough to give our staff one more shot to put together a thoughtful and realistic proposal of what we actually could do, and put our best foot forward in that regard. So I think that this is worth sending it one more shot. And if Open Space District is satisfied with these measures that we put together, then there's still a really long road ahead, and I'm sure there'll be lots of weighing of different things. I mean, I, for example, am not convinced the trail is wide enough to have dogs, but I think that today it's about that we have a great proposal to submit, and I think that it has a great shot, but at the end of the day, it's not our decision. So I support sending in this amendment.
Is there any other colleague that would like to speak at this moment?
No, I'm waiting to hear.
Councilmember Edwards?
So it has been 6 months. I'm looking forward to having this issue go away. I'm looking forward to the decision that comes back from the Open Space District. Had an interesting experience walking into the council meeting tonight, and we talk about enforcement and how difficult it is to enforce anything. And I was out on the phone outside here, and there's this massive pile of dog crap right in front of the police station, and it's just amazing that when I think back to Halloween a few weeks ago and and I'm sure there's lots of responsible dog owners, but there's a lot of dog crap on our sidewalks. I've had constituents come to me and talk about the dogs in the carts at Whole Foods. And Friedman Brothers, there's dogs virtually every day you walk in. I don't necessarily have a problem at Friedman Brothers, but I have a real problem at Whole Foods when they're in a shopping cart where you put kids' food and open bags of produce. I'd like to see this move forward. I know the staff's done a lot of work. I'm going to support moving it forward. I have a fair idea of what the Open Space District will come back with. This is a preserve, and I'd like to see it continue to be a preserve, but I'd like to move on to more important things. Talking about spending $127,000 to open up the trail. That's back with the presenter earlier with homeless housing. That's 4,096 nights that somebody would not be homeless. And I just hate wasting money. And the trail is great. It's very narrow. Agree with Ms. Hunley. It's not made. I mean, I helped keep. Actually worked on the trail, on Overlook Trail. I worked in '99 to actually keep that from becoming a hotel, and worked very hard at it and spent a lot of money doing that. And I like the fact that there are no dogs on Overlook Trail. I've seen motorcycle tracks on there. I've seen bicycle tracks. And law enforcement doesn't have the time to manage everything. And anyhow, so I'm going to support moving forward with the staff's proposal, and we'll see what happens when it comes back.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards. Is there any other colleagues that would like to comment on this? Well, mayor always goes last, so that if you don't have any comment on this?
For me, it's a Fisher cut bait time, and I'm done with this issue.
Vice Mayor Gallion?
I'll go ahead and say that for me, I believe, and having sat on the advisory committee for the Ag Preservation and Open Space District, I perhaps have just seen so many projects go through this district. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for Montini. And this particular western access was probably the biggest hurdle that had to happen for this property to come forward. And we have had people who are now in Congress in Washington, D.C., weigh in on this particular issue to make sure that this western access happened. To me, it's a non-starter, that would have to be redone. I believe totally in the natural resources of this preserve. I have to tell you, I hiked with Mr. Nelson up there when this was a tour that was done for the Ag and Open Space District. When I went up there, it was just so incredibly beautiful. I understand, your commentary, when you talked about the beauty of this. When you talk about nature, when you talk about all of the birds, the whole elements. I've had Lynn Clary go ahead and made my first trip on Montini a 2-hour hike in which those shoes were never worn again because it was in January. And they were completely ruined, due to the water value, the streams, the wild turkeys, the animals that were up there. It was just so incredible. And I realized that this was a valuable gem in the city of Sonoma. Do I love dogs? I love dogs. I wish I could have dogs, but I have cats. And I will tell you that, for me, yes, am I desperately looking for a place for them to go and be and exercise? Yes, I have. And I'm on record for saying that. But I'm also on record for saying that I want to preserve this particular prize that is up there. I do not feel that what we have written in here for dogs, frankly, for me, is a non-starter. I mean, I feel you're going to be either all dogs or you're going to be no dogs. There's two ways about it. I agree with the police chief about the fact that you can't have it be an either or. I will not be supporting this plan tonight. And those are some of my reasons for it. But I understand totally the beauty of this, the intent of this. I can see people passing before me talking about what the priority, the historic value of this property is to the city of Sonoma. And we have invested many dollars in this. And to me, to rewind that process, to go ahead and try to make a new place for something that was not intended there. I'm very upset the dogs are not going to have access there if that is the ultimate decision of what may happen here, because I feel they need a place to go in Sonoma beyond where they are currently going. But I don't feel that, number one, someone has got to be the guardian for nature. Someone has got to be the guardian for conservation and stewardship. And when we want people on a recreational aspect to be enjoying this property, we want it to be for people because that is what the recreational covenant is about. I just want to say that it is beautiful, it is pristine, it's a unique adventure for anyone. And if you have not had the opportunity to go up there, sounds like there's no one in this room that hasn't been there, I just want to say you need to go and embrace it. And I, for one, will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Gallion. I would like to start out by saying let's go down memory lane. I've been on the council for 3 years. And I remember when I was running as a candidate, this was one of the biggest issues. I think in my political career, dogs on Montini has been the big issue. And as the attorney said today, that's not what we're voting about, is are there dogs, are there not dogs? I've heard people over time say, yes, we own the Overlook. We could allow dogs on the Overlook. There's a lot of people in this room that I know has worked very hard on the Overlook to make it what it is today. That would not be fair. Montini, from the day that I came on the council, or even during the debates, my number one goal was to have Montini be in city property, because I did not trust the state. Anybody who knows what I stand for up here is I stand for local control. And this is why. Because I sat I think I was over there and Barbos was over here when they came to us about Montini. I voted for Montini because I wanted it in the coffers of the city of Sonoma to protect 50 years of not having houses looking down, in our backyards, because the state's broke. Back then, the state was even broker, and I was scared. Then there was all these people that started sending emails saying, you guys got fooled. You should have held out. I'm a businessman, and I think I'm pretty good at what I do. And I can tell you, I don't think they were bluffing. I think that there was a close chance that we would have lost Montini that night. So here I'm sitting here. I think that I might be the swing vote on this one. And probably out of all the decisions that I've made on the dais up here and doing homework and just thinking about it, this one has really captured my heart over the last 4 years. And I think it's time to say, Uncle, we lost. We need to take our energy and find a place for the dogs to go. And I'm not talking about the Overlook. I'm talking about taking the energy that city staff has spent working on this and redirect it to something that can benefit the dogs. Because I will tell you, and even though we're not voting for dogs or no dogs on Montini, I will tell you, we need tourism-based things in Sonoma that doesn't have all about drinking. Because I'm tired of the drinking. I'm in the wine business, and I'm getting a little tired of it. I like the fact of hearing people say, yes, it would be nice for tourists or even individuals that live in the city to go up somewhere. Doesn't have to be Montini, doesn't have to be the Overlook. Go somewhere with their dogs. I always remember thinking that if Montini was part of the coffers, we had the dog side, we had the no dog side. Or maybe we had the dog side, the no dog. Or maybe we had a total no dog. But we allowed dogs somewhere else. But it was our decision. This is not our decision. I don't think it ever has been. And yes, I am mad. I am upset. I am totally upset because tonight I am voting no on this because I'm done. You fool me once, you don't fool me twice. We have 32 staff positions in the city of Sonoma. We are one of the small, I think we're the third smallest city in Sonoma County. There's a reason I sit up here and I talk about local control. Because we need it. And this is why we need it. Because I can tell you, Sanders, Brown, Augie Sebastiani, Barbos, and Rouse, I saw them all up here. Some of them with me and some of them without me, debating this for the last 4 years. I got a lot of emails from Fred. I got a lot of emails from other members here about this. It's a big issue. But you know what? Our hands are tied. It's like talking about this right here, about homeless. We have people coming in here all the time, sitting homeless, help the homeless. Our hands are tied half the time. And why? Because every time there's a state or every time there's a federal election, people don't vote. But when they vote for their city council members, it's over 90%. And it should be the opposite way. Because none of us up here are one agenda candidates or one agenda council members. We care about our city. And I'm not really saying that the county doesn't care about the city of Sonoma, but I think that we care about it a little bit more. And the reason I have followed this through is because I always thought that the city of Sonoma, dogs or no dogs, because that's what it's not about, but that we had local control. So tonight, I just want to end it because it's not going to happen. And all we're going to do is we're going to spend more staff time. But what I want to see out of this is I want to see the dog-friendly and the rest of the residents come together and let's figure out a plan. Let's figure out what to do. And that's my comments. Last night as being mayor, I guess I can get a little upset. So is there a motion or any more discussion? Councilmember Hunley.
I'll get one last little piece of it, discussion. 6 months ago, we sat here and we told staff to do what they just presented to us. So it seems like if we wanted to stop this at some point, it would be before all of this additional energy went into it. So, but that's neither here nor there. I would like to make a motion to submit the proposed amendment to the open space district.
Is there
I'll
a
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Vice Mayor Gallion?
I just wanted to say that I don't think that there has been no value in the exercise of putting this amendment before us today. I think if there was anything, it was actually studying this that really made it very clear for me. And I just want to state that by not saying that I want to move this forward, it is basically because of the western access. And I really do not want to see that unwind. But more so than that, I really want to preserve the Montini property itself. When I look at that base study and I see what it could look like in a year, even if there were dogs that conceivably went on this property, it could be shut down because the damage would be so much. So just as the council would have the authority to allow dogs, it would also have the ability to rescind it, and it could be back and forth over many, many years. So what message does that send also?
Councilmember Edwards?
So Mayor Cook, I would have loved to have heard that speech back in May. Would have been terrific. But I also want to say, when you mentioned some of the other council members, we also spent, I think, $20,000 or $30,000 on mediators to find parking spaces and everything else. And I think that what I'm sensing here is we have definitely a majority of moving on with this. I just feel that the moving on with going back and presenting with the work that's been done will have a resolution that my hunch is, I've said it where I think it's going to go with the open space district, and I think we should allow it to happen, let it flow.
And my only last comment would be that I don't like the way that it is written. I think that enforcement would be a tough issue, and it's all or nothing.
But I think they will see that.
So is there any other discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. City Manager, can we call for a vote?
Councilmember Agramonte.
No.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gallion.
Nay.
Councilmember Hunley.
Yes.
Mayor Cook.
No.
No,
For-
3.
For public, item 7A did not pass. It got 2 to 3 votes. With that, we're going to move into our council member reports and comments. We're going to take a 2-minute break while everybody leaves. We're going to go ahead and open up this council meeting for council member reports and comments. Who would Vice Mayor Gallion?
I had the pleasure of being accompanied in the audience by Madeline. She came to the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority because we had our favorite joint issue together on solid waste. So I will let her report out on that in that particular respect. But I just wanted to say that in our regional climate protection aspect of the meeting, we went ahead and we decided that we would join the Compact of Mayors at the Conference of Parties in the of the 21st Conference of Parties that's going to be held in December in Paris, France. What that means is that as a county, we went ahead and will be signing on with other cities throughout the country to go ahead and hit 4 goals, which we have already taken anyway in our Climate 2020 action. One is to inventory the community-wide emissions, to identify climate hazards and vulnerabilities, adopt a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and establish a plan to reduce emissions and respond to vulnerabilities. This is all part of what we have been working on for almost an entire year now. It's over a year with the stakeholders meetings, and it'll be coming before the communities for public comment. So this is a 3-year process. Our name will be listed with all of the mayors that have signed on to this, except we will be taking it on as the Regional Climate Protection Authority. And we are the only one who is working on a countywide basis in that particular respect. We also have decided that we will work jointly with the California-China Urban Climate Collaborative, which is another action that's being taken, and that will have several cities in China working with us. ICLEI will be the program lead on this, and it'll be a long-term exchange between cities in California and China seeking to reduce carbon and air pollution and advance clean energy economies. So we would be assisting the policymakers in climate action planning, build organizational capacity for climate action planning, and connect clean tech industries with cities. It's an exciting challenge. This is really quite a wonderful aspect for Sonoma County to be taking the lead in this particular arena. And as the state starts to recognize exactly how forward-thinking we are, this is an excellent opportunity. The good news to staff is that this is no additional time for any staff or cities or whatever as far as that's concerned, because most of this is already embedded within the network with the Regional Climate Protection Authority. So we will have a badge that will be posted with our name on it and what level we are. In the Conference of Mayors, it's a 3-year process, and it has been undefined as to how long the China consortium will be together. But the California cities are Fresno, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oakland, Palo Alto, Sacramento, San Diego, San Francisco, and Riverside. So this is really exciting. I would pronounce the Chinese cities, but it would not be correct. So I just wanted to say it was a very exhilarating meeting, and one that was definitely worthwhile. I just also wanted to say that I have been listening for months, dare I say months, on the affordable housing issue with constituents coming forward, and I really would like to see our representatives in the county that actually provide the services that are needed for these particular individuals that are coming in talking to us and asking us for action, to actually be located here in the valley, to whether they establish a day of the week, whether they establish an opportunity to seek or have offices here so that they actually don't make people travel up Highway 12 to go see them. And I think they're totally equipped with all of the avenues, the education, and the staff that could go ahead and assist us and assist these residents within the Sonoma Valley. So I hope to see that we will be working on endeavors to try to connect in that particular area. This is the season of giving, and I know you walk in and you see a lot of the barrels being put up in different stores and different food markets and whatever. I'd like to thank Councilmember Edwards for his years, his decades of service in going ahead and assisting for the Thanksgiving feast that we have. And his efforts are phenomenal. Working with him, he's a very hard taskmaster, and you never stay idle for very long. He's always got a job for someone to do. And I just want to say, if you have not volunteered or are not part of that, please contact the community center. I hope to be there on that particular day, and I just wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And by that, treasure the people around you, treasure the community that you live in, and just appreciate all that you have, because there are many others that do not have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other council members that have any comments?
I do, just a couple. I did attend the Sonoma County Transportation Authority meeting, and the only reason I did that was because of that I serve on the Waste Management Agency, and because some of the duties from the Waste Management Agency, there's been a decision of possibly handing it over, transferring it to RCPA, which is within the larger agency. And so there were 4 options that were offered, and it's interesting that council members there, from the same cities, they were concerned that it would cost money, and I assured them that, we're all council members, we just serve on different agency boards, and that's our first consideration, to make sure that there is no cost for this, but it's an interesting issue, and more to be revealed, which is kind of interesting. And let me see. The other thing I love, I'm part of the Sonoma Valley Women's Club. I absolutely love that. It's like meditating. It's the nicest organization I believe I belong to. I'm very excited about it. So, of course, I worked the kitchen and served hot dogs with Ann Silverman, and we had a blast at their craft fair, and I just love it. I can't wait for next year. My favorite food, hot dogs. Thank you. Oh, and my office hours for the next 2 weeks will continue to be Tuesday from 10:30 to 11:30.
Is there any other council member comments? Well, I'd like to finish by saying that we had the lighting of the plaza, so be sure to go out there and enjoy the plaza. It's beautiful, and I want to thank my colleagues on the council and all the council members who voted for the TID that has allowed this, the Tourism Improvement District, who is flipping the bill on that, which I think is really nice. And I do want to talk a little bit about what happened in France. Very upsetting. As a mayor of a small town, I could only hardly imagine what it must be like to be an elected official or any type of an ambassador and have something like that happen. Like Vice Mayor Gallion said, it's the holiday times. It's time that we need to be giving. But look over your shoulder, please. It's scary. Times are changing a little bit. I was in a mall the other day in San Rafael, and it was really the first time that I just looked over my back and just kind of being aware of my surroundings. So if I could just say one thing to the residents of Sonoma, just be careful as you're traveling out of state, out of country, and even here within the U.S. And we started out the meeting dedication by Madeline, Councilmember Agramonte. To Lino Sotele. And with that, I will give it over to the city manager for her comments.
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Just a quick update, because housing was on the agenda tonight, and it's always, one of our foremost focuses. As you're aware, the Sonoma County Housing Authority issued a request for proposal on the Broadway housing site and at the northwest corner of Broadway and Clay. The Housing Authority received 7 responses
responses from affordable housing developers, which is really exciting. As you may recall, the ownership of that property was formerly owned by the Sonoma Community Development Agency, and it was transferred to the Housing Authority in 2012. We had previously purchased that property back in 2008 with the intention of developing that property through our redevelopment agency. And then when the dissolution of redevelopment happened, that property was transferred as a requirement of that dissolution, and the property was transferred. So we're really excited that the Housing Authority is moving forward. The RFP calls for the development of that property for rental housing at a very low and low income levels. And so the staff of the Housing Authority is reviewing the responses in the terms of the criteria set forth in the RFP with input from our planning staff, which we are really fortunate to have such a great planning staff right there. And
He's turning red.
Huh?
He blushed.
No, I'm serious. I mean, how much, we're really fortunate. And the staff will be making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who will make the final decision on the successful proposal. But we hope that will happen in December, and we can move forward in 2016 with the project. So Sonoma County Housing Authority obviously will be the lead agency, but they will be working with the city on the actual proposal. So really excited about that. I mean, we have been looking forward to this project since we purchased the property in 2008, and really excited that that project will be coming to fruition, at least starting in 2016. So.
Thank you, Carol, and congratulations on what happened on Saturday night. Dale Earnhardt won NASCAR.
Absolutely.
And with that, I'm going to comments from the public.
I always want to say at the beginning of the council meeting that I always enjoy the Pledge of Allegiance, because for that moment, then I feel like we're all on the same team. So it's enjoyable during the Pledge of Allegiance to feel that sense of belonging here. And I also like to say, David, Mayor Cook, it's been nice having you be the mayor, and so I'm looking forward to seeing you step over to the side and know that you've been mayor, like people who have been mayor who now I know in town. So congratulations.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it. Is there any other public from comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:05.